Hey, welcome everybody to the show. This is the Why Not Me podcast. I am your host, Jerry Ruiz. Everyone usually looks to the stars for their answers, but today you could look on my channel because I have Andy Bellatti from Astrology with Andy. Say what up, Andy.
Hey everybody, how's it going? And Jerry, how are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good, bro. Did I pronounce your name right?
You did, very well done. Not many people can do that, so congratulations.
I'm not gonna lie, that's probably one of the most nerve-wracking parts of the show, bro. I gotta start it off smooth, you know.
Yeah.
All right, man. I'm excited to have you on here. This is something that's kind of out of my comfort zone, so
Mm.
I feel like that's one of the best things in life is to find different aspects that you don't know about and figure it out. So,
Well, and you are an Aquarius, so that's very much in line with your sun sign.
oh
That makes
shit. All right, like I'm kind of nervous because I feel like you're just gonna be prejudging me this whole time. But, I guess as an astrologist, do you kind of judge people before you even meet them, or can you kind of tell?
Well, so here's the thing. I definitely don't judge because one thing about astrology, astrology is very humanizing because it reminds us that we all have different parts to ourselves. We all have talents and skills and wonderful things about us, and we also all have blind spots or challenges or what you would call your shadow side. So in that way, I don't judge because, like I tell my clients, I have my own shit in my own chart that I have to address. So I'm not like some perfect guru who has all the answers. But to answer your other question, yes. As far as when I look at a chart, especially now, I've been doing this as a career for a year and a half, but I've been reading astrology charts for 20 years. But my point is that within 2 minutes of looking at a chart, I very quickly kind of get an overall gist where I might get, this is more of an introvert who doesn't really like to be in public, or there's more somebody who likes being the center of attention, or there's somebody who may be a really great writer, public speaker, and this might be somebody who's really into health. So you can get those little tidbits right away. Then, of course, I got to study a chart longer to really get to the nitty gritty. But your birth chart is like a fingerprint. It's really unique just to you.
All right, man. I like being unique, so that's dope. uh, before before I gave you my information, could you tell I was an Aquarius, or is that something, or were you like maybe he's one of these three?
Well, I figured that with you having a podcast, I figured that you were very likely one of the three air signs, Gemini, Libra, or Aquarius, because the three air signs have to do with communication. So a lot of times when you have people who are very much into this, they do have that very strongly. Now, the thing is, so yes, everybody knows their sun sign. Like, I'm an Aquarius, I'm a Pisces. But one thing about astrology and a birth chart is that you realize that you look at the sun and the moon and all the other planets. So this is why oftentimes the client will tell me, well, I'm a Sagittarius, but I don't feel like one. And lo and behold, I look at their chart and they have the moon and Venus and Mars and Saturn all in Capricorn. So that's why some people may not identify too much with their sun sign, because the sun sign is just one of 12 things that you look at. Whereas some people, for example, might be Gemini, their sun is in Gemini, and they also have a lot of other Gemini things in their chart. So that's where you get to, again, how everybody's different, and you can't just put people into 12 buckets just based on where their sun is.
All right, that makes a lot of sense because before I knew there was different signs for different people. I would kind of just assume that, like, well, if I was born in these certain days, this certain month, like, how are you gonna categorize me the same as this guy? Like, what if I was born the same time as Donald Trump? I'm nothing like Donald Trump, but you're gonna go ahead and say that we're like similar.
That's a great point. And that's a lot of times when I start. So the way that I do my readings is usually on Zoom, on video, and I share my screen so that my client and I can look at the chart together.
Kind of like
And
this.
exactly, yeah, exactly, because it also makes it more personal. But one thing I like to show people is that, to do a birth chart, I need your date of birth, but also your time, like to the minute, and where you were born. And what I usually would show somebody, the first thing I do in a session is I will show them how if they had been born the same date in the same place 30 minutes later or an hour later, that's a totally different chart. So to your point, it's not even saying that you, Jerry, are not like the 300 million other Aquariuses in the world. It's that even somebody who was born the same date as you in the same place, but an hour later, if they came to me, I would be telling them different things. So it truly is, as I was saying, like a fingerprint. It only applies to you.
What about with twins, since they're kind of born at the same time?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So what happens with twins usually is that sometimes they might be born 2 or 3 minutes apart. And even that and that's why with a birth time, you want to get really exact, because even just 2-3 minutes will give a slight, tiny change, not the same. What you do tend to see with twins is that a lot of times they go through similar milestones at the same time, not the exact same event. But for example, you might have where when one twin gets married, the other one has a huge promotion at work, or when one moves out of the country, the other one has a huge change. So they have similar kind of energies in the chart. But also what I found with twins, and this is just from my own doing of charts, a lot of times it's almost like they split their chart in half. So you'll have one twin who lives out more of this part of the chart, and another twin who lives out this other part of the chart. And there's almost a split that's really interesting that I've seen.
All right, that makes sense. So you can have one of the twins super nice, super caring, and then the other twin's just a complete asshole.
Well, in slightly, let's say, nicer terms, you might have one twin who embodies more of like the extroverted part of the chart, and the other one who's much more kind of shy and reclusive. So it's more things like that. Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, I had to say that so I can kind of gauge how comfortable you are with me cursing or not.
Oh, I love cursing, so
Okay.
please feel free to drop as many curses as you want. All good. I'm not a prude. I'm totally open.
Okay. So right now, the vibe feels pretty cool, man. I feel like this is gonna be a good episode. It's
Same.
chill. The good thing about running your own show is you can do and say whatever you want.
Yeah. And again, just to kind of, because I do want to weave in little things about your chart here and there.
That's fine.
Aquarius is all about, the key thing for Aquarius is independence and freedom. Aquarius is not really like the rules. They're not fond of playing by the rules. So this is why I always tell my Aquarius clients, even if you were to work in, like, say, a corporation, with an Aquarius, they might want to set their own schedule, or they might want to kind of work in a different way from everybody else. So it's really important for Aquariuses to have also that freedom, because Aquariuses will be the first ones to feel kind of suffocated, or like people are telling them what to do. So it's very important for an Aquarius to do their own thing, and also in their own way. And a lot of times Aquariuses can be ahead of the curve. So everybody else kind of has to catch up to them because they're on to the next thing, and they can be very visionary as well.
Okay, I like that. You're saying nothing but good things about me. You can keep that up. If you start saying bad things, I might end the show.
Well, I use a sandwich approach. You start with a good thing, then you put the not so nice thing in the middle, and then you end with a good thing. So
Okay.
stay tuned.
All right, I'll be waiting for that 1-2 punch. All right.
Right.
And at the same time too, man, I'm trying to respect you and your brand. So I'm not gonna try to go too crazy, but like I said,
appreciate that.
we'll see how the vibe goes, right?
Cool.
So speaking of your brand, what is Astrology with Andy? Like, quick summary.
Yeah. So kind of like why I named it that, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, because my whole thing, I feel like my whole mission is to democratize astrology. I feel like astrology for so long has been the thing that is kind of obscure, and people don't, and also a lot of times it's very talked about in a way that's really mystical. And so I figure, Astrology with Andy, the vibe I want to give is that you're just kind of meeting with me and we're just having like a chat. I remember when I had my website designer make my website, I was telling her the vibe that I'm going for is not like me in a forest, like lighting incense and like meditating. That's not who I am. I want to have more of a vibe of like we're having a dinner party and we're just talking about astrology in a way that's really simple to understand and easy. I always say I am not a guru. I'm not, a master of anything. I'm a human being who just happened to study this. Astrology, anybody can be an astrologer, just like anybody can be a lawyer, anybody can be a doctor, anybody can be a mechanic. You
Well,
just
not
gotta.
just anybody, but
Well, true. I mean, I guess you got to have certain skills, absolutely. But my point is that this is not about me. Like I was not born with a gift, or I'm not psychic. I don't see visions. So I kind of want to kind of break it down and just make it accessible for people, make it practical, make it easy to understand. So that's kind of my vibe and my brand. I want to be approachable, and also keep it fun. Astrology should not be, as much as I love it, it should not run your life. It's just a tool in your toolbox that you have for better insight. That's the most that it is.
yeah, so it shouldn't be like a stat sheet or something like that. It's just
Right. Yeah, it shouldn't be like, should I at what time should I go food shopping based on my chart? Like that's ridiculous. Like you only use it for very important things. And one thing that one of my pet peeves is you never, ever determine how compatible you are with somebody else only based on their sun. For that, you got to study somebody's entire chart. So, this nonsense of, oh, I hate Scorpios, I don't like Geminis. That's a bunch of nonsense. Because there's, like I said, there's 200 million of each one.
You tell, hey, you're all three, girl. He's like, yeah, hey,
Right. So,
well, you said this is your vibe, right? I guess if I was doing it, I'd just write the different signs on my hands. I only got two hands, so what is it? Three different signs?
what for? How many signs there are total?
Yeah, for a person, like how many can a person?
Oh, well, so here, okay, great question. So there are what I call the three pillars of anybody's, which is the sun, the moon, and the rising sign. Those are like the big three. But, people you could have your sun in Aquarius, your Mercury in Capricorn, your Venus in Aries, your Saturn in Libra. I mean, you can have a variety, or some charts, they only have like everything packed into one or two signs. So it varies from person to person.
So if I was gonna do it, I'd have their sign written on my hands, and then I just
there you go, like a cheat sheet.
Nah, I just slap them with it and be like, yeah, what is your sign?
Me?
Yeah,
I'm Gemini.
Yeah, Gemini. Okay, so your main one is Gemini. I'd be like, oh, you're a Gemini, huh? I can tell by how you flinched. But
yeah, kind of like a little trick there.
yeah, but see, that's why I'm not into it, because I'm not as compassionate and as nice as you are, man. So, how long have you been studying astrology for?
So I started studying it back in 2000.
Dang.
Yeah. So this is the thing too, that, I started my business, and I have a funny story about that whole thing too, but I started my business in February of 2019. So almost 2 years ago, but I've been studying astrology for almost 20 years. So what I mean by that is that I had a whole foundation. I didn't really feel ready for many reasons that we can get into, but I didn't feel ready to really offer services in a professional fashion until 2019. Because there's a lot I can tell you this about astrology, and a lot of people who have maybe studied it will know. At first you think, what's there to learn? There's like 12 signs, and just remember the 12 signs. But then when you look at a chart and you're like, oh, I got to learn about the sun, the moon, Mercury, and then all the different angles that the planets are involved in, there's a lot to learn. It becomes like this kind of rabbit hole you go down. But I started back in, 2000 when I was 18.
Damn, 18, bro? I thought you were going to say you were like 3 years old when you started 15 years ago.
I'm 38.
Bro, I think I look older than you do, man. That's crazy.
Well, I did think it was funny when, in preparation for this podcast, we were messaging on Instagram, and you kind of made a joke about whether or not I was old enough to drink. And I was like, I'm older than you.
Yeah, bro, I honestly did. I was like, oh, maybe he's 21. Bro, I couldn't tell, man. And I used to be a security guard, so I don't know if that's good or bad that I can't tell people's age.
Oh, were you like a bouncer or?
Yeah, I was kind of a bouncer. It was a club slash casino. So
Oh, okay.
so when
Okay.
when it came to the club part, I was a bouncer, but then the rest I was just security. It was,
Gotcha.
yeah, it was pretty
Gotcha.
sick,
Yeah.
man. And
Well, I still get carded sometimes, so it's a compliment.
yeah, I don't. So yeah, there there goes that. They just let me in, bro. um. So you said you wanted to prepare for, or you didn't take it not seriously, but you felt like you weren't ready till 2 years ago. I'm assuming that's kind of when you started making money off of it, right?
Yeah, so for the longest time, I was doing it more as a hobby in the sense that I had, full-time jobs and I would occasionally maybe do like one or two a month at most. And it was mainly for friends of friends. And then what ended up happening, I mean, I enjoyed it and it's not like I didn't know that I was good at it.
Yeah.
But then over time, friends started telling me, you should really consider like offering this to more people. But of course, with my other jobs, I didn't have time. And so one thing that happened, and this might sound like a bit of a cliche, but here we go. So I live in Vegas,
Let's
and
go.
what's that?
I said, let's go.
Right. And so for 5 years living in Vegas, I was in the grips of a horrible gambling addiction that brought me to my knees. I mean, it was terrible.
Damn.
Yeah, it was awful. And prior to that, I had never had any addiction issues at all. But the reason why I mentioned this is because I finally got into recovery December of 2017. So in fact, in 2 months, I have 3 years of recovery.
Did you win big or something? And then you're like, all right, I'm done.
No, the opposite actually. After
uh,
like 5 years of nonstop losing, I mean, I lost everything,
damn.
everything. And also, I felt like shit. I mean, addiction, right? It's like addiction is like, especially gambling addiction. There's a financial piece that goes to hell, and then on top of that, I felt like a loser. I felt like a fraud. It's just awful.
Um,
But one thing I
ho-
learned in recovery, what's
Sorry.
that?
I would say, so you probably felt like I'm not even enjoying this and I'm still doing this. Why? Like what's the point?
All the time. I mean, I can't. Basically, for 5 years, it would be me um, spending way too much at the casino, losing it all, getting into my car and saying, "That's it, never again," and then 2 days later going back. I mean, it was like ridiculousness. But one thing that you learn in recovery is about kind of taking a look at your life and being like, what are you doing? Are you happy with it, et cetera, et cetera. So I say this because in a way, me getting into recovery got me thinking about my life, like the big picture of life. And I'll never forget that there was a point where, like 6 months into recovery, I was like, one thing I really like is astrology. And right away I thought, well, maybe when I'm like 55 or 60, when I retire, I can do it as a career. And then I thought, no, fuck that. Why am I going to wait 30 years to do something I love? So that's kind of what kicked it off. This idea of like examining my life. What am I doing with it? Realizing that life is short and I better enjoy it and do things I like. And that's kind of what started this transition from hobby to turning it into a career.
All right, hell yeah. Um, I kind of was in a similar position, minus the whole gambling addiction. Uh,
Uh-huh.
so what I'm talking about is with the podcast. I think it's 3 months now. It really doesn't feel like it. It feels like it's just been 1 month. But I kept telling myself like, oh, I'm gonna wait to do it until like I have the perfect setting. I have like a whole room or a whole studio to do it. I have the right equipment. And then I just finally told myself, you know what? If I keep waiting till the perfect time, I'm never gonna do it because there's no such thing as a perfect time. Sorry if like for the people that heard this before, I probably say it like once a month. It sounds like I'm repeating myself, but like if you were with me since the beginning, you saw I was in the corner of my kitchen. You probably couldn't tell unless I said. I had a
Nothing wrong with
little,
that.
yeah. I had this little mic that was connected to my headphones. That's what I was using. So I just said screw it. I'm gonna do it because if I don't do it, I'm never gonna do it. What's the whole point of making excuses? And
Yeah, exactly. And I think for me, it was very easy to get into this whole thing. I'm not the most I don't really like the nitty gritty of business. I don't like keeping, like tracking expenses and all that stuff. So one thing I did was I went to a friend of mine who does that. He serves as business consultant for people in these kinds of businesses. And he's the one who helped me so much. Like, he's like, to schedule people, you're not going to be emailing back and forth with somebody. You need to buy this really cool website, scheduleonce.com. Like, they take care of that. Then he's like, for your bookkeeping, you got to do this. So that really helped me get organized. And then I felt like, well, now I have no excuse, because now that somebody's helping me set up all the logistics and business around it, then I had to think about marketing and whatnot. But the point is that for me, I just felt it like in my gut, where I'm like, I love to do this. I need to do it. And I need to stop talking myself out of stuff too.
yeah, I agree. And the good thing with me is I don't really make any money doing this, so I got no bookkeeping, man.
There you go. You don't have to deal with taxes
No,
and all that nonsense. Yeah.
now I just got to deal with the damn. Why is my credit card so high? um, but how long do you prep for a consultation, or how long does it take for you to set up for?
Well, so I offer different readings. The most popular reading is 90 minutes, and that's when I review somebody's birth chart, and then we talk about the year ahead.
Is that a certain price, or is there like a how do you charge prices too, if you don't mind me asking?
Oh yeah, sure. Well, so that's $195, and that's based on the time that we spend together, because obviously the 90 minutes is work time. But then I usually spend about a half hour preparing for a reading. So that's 2 hours of my time.
Yeah.
And I say that because it's not, I think some people might think, oh, okay, so you just start the reading and start talking. But I like to prepare. There's a lot of things that I like being organized for a client. I don't do anything on the fly. So that's also why, for example, I've set up my scheduling so that you can't just book a reading with me an hour from now, because I need time to get ready. And again, once you realize how much goes into astrology, you realize that you need to prepare for things. Much like, the same way that I used to be a health coach. In fact, I'm a dietitian by training. I have my master's degree in nutrition. And back when I was a health coach, same thing. Like, before a client came, I would look at their file and what did we talk about last time. You need that prep time for a reading as well.
Yeah, no, I agree. What would if you would guess? Do you think I'm someone that does a lot of prep time, or I'm someone that just flies by the seat of my pants? I guess.
Oh, that's interesting. I mean, Aquarius Sun, Leo Moon. I think that you can get. I would think that you would find prep time a little bit too much of a chore and boring. I feel like it quickly.
Yeah, that's crazy. Whatever, dude. Can I change my name to Aquarius Sun Leo Moon?
There you go.
Sounds like a crazy name. um, yeah, I'm kind of 50-50. I guess I have like an outline. I usually do like an outline of what I want to do, and then I go from there. Cause I feel like if I plan it like to the T, it's never gonna go that way I plan, you know. And then I feel like if I don't do any outline, that I'm just gonna be like unprepared and just be standing there like, what am I supposed to do, you know?
Yeah, and it's funny because Aquarius energy is very improvisational. So I could imagine that maybe you have like the topics, but then you kind of want to go with the flow and in the moment kind of see what comes up more naturally. Whereas, for example, like a Capricorn, I'm a Virgo moon. So the moon is about our emotional needs and what do we need to feel kind of safe. With my Virgo moon, I'm all about planning. So I love I love bullet points and I like lists. And that's why I set with my Virgo moon, that's why I set up my scheduler so that you can't book a reading with me an hour later. Like, I need a day or two to look at my schedule. So whereas a Leo moon is a little bit, and the Aquarius sun together, that's a little bit more of like, let's just kind of see where things go. And I think you probably feel very comfortable maybe winging things, quote unquote. Whereas structure, again, going back to the Aquarius sun, structure actually makes you feel very like boxed in.
Yeah, I guess that's true too. I feel like I don't know, man. I still we'll still see how I feel about this, but it's a little crazy. It's a little crazy. Um, so how long? You said it was an hour and a half, a normal session, right? What are your different rates, or not rates, but different times that you do?
Mhm. Yeah, and then you can, so the an hour and a half is birth chart and year ahead. Birth chart only without the year ahead is an hour. Then the year ahead by itself is an hour. So at the very least, it's like, and I with my Virgo moon, I like things to be on time. But with that being said, sometimes I'll have a client where I have a lot to say. And I'm not going to say, okay, well, it's 90 minutes, we're done. And I'm also not going to be an asshole and be like, well, we still have 20 more minutes. And so I'm going to charge you $40 more. I don't do that. So sometimes my readings will be 2 hours long. If I have a lot to say, to me, what's important is making sure that my client walks away with insight and information. And I'm not going to nickel and dime anybody. That's like, to me, that's like an asshole move. And eventually, I feel like karma eventually gets you. So, I'm happy to go longer if needed.
I'm sure you're a big believer in karma too, huh?
Yeah, I am. Yeah, I think a lot of that, I guess like you would call it spirituality or whatnot, but I do, and I do believe in a lot of that. I also do believe a lot in intuition. And I think it's something that we all have. I maybe some people have it more developed than others. I just think that unfortunately we live in the kind of society where things like intuition are not taken seriously, and very often we're told to oppress it or push it down. But I think we all have that capacity.
I don't know if this might be kind of similar to what you're talking about, but I usually tell people to go with their first instinct. Don't second guess yourself. I mean, technically,
Yes.
that is kind of what you are talking about, because more often than not, you're probably right or closer to being right if with your first instinct. And it's also a self
Exactly.
confidence thing too, right? Like,
Completely. And for a lot of people, I'm always asked a question like, well, how do I know if it's my instinct or if it's like paranoia? And what I often say is that if it's your instinct, it's not usually coming from a place of like, intense fear and thinking that the world is conspiring against you. Paranoia comes more from a place of thinking that people are out to get you. That's usually not your instinct. So it's important to differentiate the two, because if not, they can get conflated and then people get really confused. But I agree with you. I think and that's what I was saying earlier. Like, I'll never forget the day when I just got this feeling in my gut that said, you need to turn this into a business. I just felt it.
hell yeah! And what'd you say you charge people like an hour for an hour and a half, 195?
Yes.
Okay, I'll send you your bill later. Okay.
Okay. Sounds good.
Yeah. Nah, I'm just messing with you, man. I don't know. One day it'd be sick to get like promotions or something, ad revenue, something. That's my main goal to do this. But I'm
Yeah.
I'm obviously not gonna charge my guests because they're the ones doing me a big service coming on
No, I
here.
gotcha. Yeah. But it's interesting how in thinking about, and because it is my first time working for myself, right? And you start realizing about kind of when you start figuring out your price point, it's about the time you spend. Also, the time that I spent, like I said, I've been studying this for 20 years.
Yeah.
So also charging for my expertise and my knowledge. But then you think about all the expenses you have, and then a lot of I don't pay for advertisements. Like, I don't pay X amount of money to have a billboard here in Vegas. But you think about the fact that for me, my Instagram account is advertisement, and
Yeah.
that's time. Some of these posts that I share, they might take me 2 or 3 hours to make, but to me, that's an investment.
Yeah.
So that's kind of also, you have to factor that in financially, because obviously the time that I'm working on an Instagram post is money that I can't be with a client making money. So, you got to think about all that stuff. But to me, Instagram has been a really great way to connect with people, for people to kind of get to know my vibe, and for me to also kind of, talk about astrology in the way that I want to talk about it, which is also a way that's, I'm not writing like a 300-page book. I might just do like a 10-minute video or a quick little meme. So that's been fun for me as well, figuring out the different ways to communicate.
So in a becoming a astrologer, well, professionally, you also became a content creator, right? Because
Yeah. Oh,
be,
yeah.
because without you have to give people a reason to watch you or go to your page or follow you socially even when you're not doing something, right? But
Totally. And that's where, I have a bit of an interesting path because so I got my bachelor's degree in journalism. And I love journalism. I love to write.
you want to interview me? You want to switch this around?
Yeah. Do we just switch this?
Yeah, I
I mean,
can.
we can if you want.
I'll flip the cameras and people will see that.
Yeah. I'm a Gemini. I'm adaptable. Um, but and then I got my master's degree in nutrition and I was a health coach. And on the outside, people might be like, well, how the hell do you go from one to the other? But when I look at my current job as an astrologer, my current career, it's like, well, the journalism stuff has been super handy because knowing how to write and knowing how to speak, which as a journalist you have to do, has helped me a lot in communicating with my clients, in writing my posts. I also have a blog. So that's a kind of like a journalistic kind of vibe. Coaching also helped me a lot because, in health coaching, you're doing like motivational interviewing and you're not judgmental and you're talking to people. And I also bring that. So I say that because you never know where something will lead. You might study something and then maybe never end up working in it, but the skills that you learn can be applied to something else. And I think that's something really important for people to keep in mind. You didn't waste money on a degree if you didn't end up working in that thing, because you still learned skills that you're going to use for the rest of your life.
Amen. Amen. And that's kind of funny because earlier before our little pregame, I guess we'll call it, while we're chatting, I was telling you
Yeah.
some the point of this originally was for people to know that there are other ways to make money and have a different career and be happy other than like the normal school way. You have to go to college, you have to be this, you have to do that. Um,
Sure.
and then I told you, you know what? I'm kind of backtracking a little on it now. Like that, you can do that and be successful and be happy.
Yes,
And
absolutely.
and you found the perfect medium. You did both. Not only did you go to school, but you still use it to help you in your career. Um,
Yeah. And what I'll add to that too is that, astrology, I mean, there are actual schools of astrology, but I didn't go to one. So I think I'm an example too of how you can teach yourself and then also put in the work. I mean, it's not like I picked up one astrology book and 3 months later I was like, I'm an astrologer now. Because if I did that, people would come to me and be like, you have no idea what you're doing. But the point is that, there's nothing says that I agree with you. I think not everybody has to go to college. Not everybody has to go get a degree. There's many things you can do without it. And it's about you figuring out what your skills are, what are you good at, and let's be honest. Going to college means you're going to graduate with 100K in debt. That's not the easiest path already. So why set yourself up like that? So I agree with you. I don't think that's the only way to have success at all.
and and another thing too is what's gonna make you happy in life. That's something they don't really teach too much about in school. They do say like be successful and choose a career you want, but they don't tell you like when they say want, choose something that makes you happy because you might be doing this for the rest of your life, bro. And that's a main point I wish they kind of focused on as well. And
That's so important. Yeah. Because here's the thing, and I mean, it sounds kind of cliche and it sounds like a motivational quote that you might see on Pinterest, but I think it's true. The idea that if you truly love what you do, it doesn't feel like a job.
yeah, exactly. And you know how earlier you said that you didn't go to like a specific school for this, like a technical school in astrology.
Right, right.
The sky was your book, right? That's all you had to look up to.
Yeah, exactly.
and
It was right there all along.
and I kind of wanted to ask you too. So you know how you said there was a point where this is kind of to the original question I asked you. You know how I asked you how did you decide when to monetize it? Were you kind
Mm.
of scared to make it a business? Like not only like I guess scared in two ways. Like scared as in like okay, you know what, I'm finally gonna do it. And then were you scared as in like I'm gonna be charging people for a service? Hopefully, I live up to the service that I give them. Or were you just fully confident like, you know what, I'm charging them for this reason because I know this is what I'm worth, and I know I'm gonna give them the best of my ability.
Those are really great questions. So the first thing I'll say is that I think, again, having been through addiction recovery, you really face yourself, and it also helps you with your self-worth. So I think that because I started this at a time when I was like healing myself and coming from a good place, I had a boost of confidence. And it's not about being cocky, but I knew that, you know what, I've been doing this for a while. A lot of people suggested that I made this a career because I do well. But it was definitely a transition going from, doing birth charts for friends and friends of friends to strangers. And that's where I had to be very honest with myself. And one thing I do is I always send out a SurveyMonkey survey, very short. It can be done in literally 90 seconds, but to my clients, and it's completely anonymous. I don't know who responded, and I know nothing. Like, I don't get the IP address, I don't get the time zone, but that's where, because I'm my own boss, and a lot of people, let's face it, if I were to ask somebody at the end of their reading, so what did you think? Unless it was truly horrible, most people are not going to say, well, you could have done this better. I didn't like this about it. So about a week or so after a reading, I like to get feedback. Because to your point, I need to make sure that what I'm offering people like. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
I think that's really important. And then I think I kind of lost my train of thought. But you were asking
It's
scared
fine.
of if I felt scared of charging and running the business, right?
Yeah. What I say? Were you scared that you were overcharging or undercharging? I guess.
Oh, well, I will say this too, because even though I'm an astrologer, a lot of times people ask me, so do you just read your own chart all the time? And the answer to that is, so technically I have the skills to look at my chart and see what's going on. But in the same way that like a psychotherapist can't analyze themselves because they're way too close to the issue, I don't read my own chart because I can project my anxieties or my worries or my hopes onto a chart. I say that because I have my chart read by another astrologer. And so I knew what other astrologers charged. So I had a reference point, based on that also helped me. So I knew that I wasn't underselling myself or overcharging either.
Uh, you keep saying a chart. How is like when you keep saying that? I picture like you know back in the old days they had like a map of the Earth and like it's all
Oh,
it's all flat and all that. Is that like what you're actually talking about, like an actual chart like that, or is it just like kind of a template on your phone or something, or
oh
maybe
yeah.
now in your brain?
So a birth chart, what it looks like a circle divided into 12. Imagine like a pizza divided into 12 slices. That's what a birth chart looks like. And then all throughout, that's where, then the sun is here, the moon is there, Mercury is here. But that's what it looks like. It's like a 2D drawing of a circle split into 12, and all around it are all the 12 signs of the zodiac.
So like you said, the sun and Mercury and all that. That's like the pepperoni on the pizza, on
Right. So it's
the
like the
chart.
olives, the pineapple, the ham, the whole deal. Exactly.
Okay. And then I guess the Aquarius would be pineapple because they're sweet, right?
Yeah. Well, that's funny you say that because, all the signs, they rule different things. So for example, because Aquarius rules things like lightning and earthquakes and electricity, because Aquarius energy is very sudden and
Let's
out of the.
go.
So to your point, I feel like pineapple on a pizza is very Aquarius because it's not your tried and true thing. It has like a
Yeah.
little bit of interesting twist. So absolutely, that's very well said.
All right. Hell yeah. And you know what? So you're pretty much saying that astrology is a pizza, right? Is that?
It is. Yeah, it
Okay.
is. It is because in the that's such a good point because pizza has, you have the crust, you have the cheese, you have the sauce and the toppings. And the problem is that the way that most people talk about astrology is only about the sun sign. So that would be like if you ordered a pizza and all you got was like a bunch of tomato sauce. You're like, where the fuck is everything else? Same thing with this. Like, you got to look at everything to make the final product, the final pizza.
To make the
Um,
perfect pizza.
Totals. Yeah. 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 Yeah.
All right, man.
Totally.
Hey, maybe you should get sponsored by like Pizza Hut or like Papa Murphy's or something. 'Cause,
Well, but you got to remember, I'm also a dietitian, so I don't know
uh,
if I don't know, I got to maybe find like a vegan pizza or something like that.
I think they got like gluten free crust and all that. But
There we go.
all right,
There we
we'll
go.
stop talking about pizza though. But I feel like this is a good way now that if I'm ever hungry, I could just tell my fiance like, you know what, you're into astrology, I'm into pizza. Let's just meet in the middle and order a pizza.
There we go. Exactly.
Hell yeah, man. Gosh, it's crazy because I did a little preparation. And when I say little, I pretty much just watched like different YouTube videos about like astrology.
Mm,
Um, e-
okay.
Everyone's personality was completely different.
Uh-huh.
And I remember they kept talking about like the birth chart, this and that, and I was like, man, what the heck is this actual chart like?
Yeah.
I picture my fiance like bursting into the door right now and being like, look, I got the chart right here, She's, are you ready? But I feel kind of bad too because obviously I'm gonna keep talking about my sign or my main sign, whatever. What is it? The sun?
Yeah. Yeah.
What my
Your
sun?
sun sign.
My sun
Your
sign.
sun sign, Aquarius. Uh-huh.
So I'm gonna keep talking about my sun sign, and like there's 11 other ones, and they're not being brought up. So
Well, that's all right. Well, I mean, it's your show as well,
yeah,
it's
that's true.
and
It's my time
and
to
you,
shine, right?
yeah, and you have the Leo moon. You have your moon in Leo, and the moon is about my needs. And Leo likes attention. Leo likes the spotlight. Leo likes to feel special. Leo's a performer. Leo also has a creative to it. So with the Leo moon, I think that having you in the spotlight is a good thing.
Okay. So if I moon like a group of people, can I tell them to look at my Leo?
What's that?
If
Yeah.
I um what's it called? Sorry, sorry about that.
I'll go.
Um,
Sorry, it took me a second. I was like, oh yeah,
so
yeah.
everyone watching, go ahead and comment your sun sign. That way I can kind of know what we got in here. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Let's do that. Absolutely.
I like.
Way, since we're at it, I kind of want to throw a little bit of like trivia here and there. One of the myths about astrology that some people say is that, oh, I'm on the cusp. Some people, because normally, depending on the year, the sun goes into another sign either the 20th, 21st, or 22nd of the month. And some people might say, oh, I was born June 21st. I'm on the cusp between Gemini and Cancer. No, your sun is either in one sign or the next. You're not a blend. Like, yes, you can be a blend of signs with your sun and your moon, but your sun is never in between, like on the fence. It's either in one or the other. And that's where a lot of times you really got to get a birth chart done, because that's where the minute difference can come into play. So you might be born, say, June 21st at 3:52 p.m. in LA, and you're a Gemini. 3:53 p.m. you're a Cancer. So sometimes down to the minute, it can change your sun sign.
Okay, so everyone that's gonna be watching this, whether live or rebroadcasted, you can't pick and choose your personality traits just because it doesn't fit into what you like.
Yeah, and by the way, another point I want to make, and there's like another, I'm a Virgo moon, so I have a lot of pet peeves. One of my pet peeves is astrology is not supposed to be what you go to explain why you're an asshole. So you can't say like, oh, I can't help but be a douchebag. My Mercury is on top of Pluto. No, that's not how it is. If anything, once you know your birth chart, once you know better, you do better. Once you know your birth chart, yes, I have seen birth charts where I tell somebody, your default. Because here's the thing, a birth chart is like basically your factory settings, right? So when my phone came with the factory settings of this ringtone or this font size. If I don't like it, I go to the settings app and I change it. Same thing with a birth chart. All the birth chart shows me is if we let this chart do its thing, here's what it will do. And there are some birth charts that by default or the factory settings are to be very combative and to want to fight people and to be argumentative. That doesn't mean that you're doomed to that. What it means is now that you know this about your chart, you need to get ahead of it and balance it out. So I don't co-sign any of that nonsense of, oh, I can't help but be this way because of my chart. No, that's not how I do it.
Hell yeah. Anyways, if I was in a session with you and you told me my chart and I didn't like it, I'd be like, you know what? I think you need to look again, bro. Just slide you a 20 real quick.
Right. Yeah. No refunds either. No refunds and no bribes.
So right now we got an Aries sun and moon and rising. We got a Scorpio and we got an Aquarius sun, Gemini moon, and Gemini rising. So,
wow. Did you say that somebody has Aries sun, Aries moon, and Aries rising?
Yeah, it just says Aries sun, moon, and rising.
Wow. So that's a triple Aries. So yeah, that's an example where...
Does that mean she's crazy?
Well, again, I'm not a judgmental astrologer, but what I will say is that when you have triple Aries, that's a lot of impatient, hasty energy. So when you have so much Aries, you really need to make sure that you slow down and breathe and think things through, because Aries energy, when you have triple Aries, there can be a lot of, I'm already 15 steps ahead of you and I didn't even really hear where I'm supposed to go. With that being said, Aries is very dynamic, very forceful. So that's not a very shy sign. So a lot of Aries is great with like entrepreneurial things. They're great for getting things done because an Aries wants everything done yesterday, which can be very good. But again, they really have to watch the impatience, the irritability. The Aries moon is also very impulsive. So again, they need to count to like 20 in their head before they respond, because the default is to respond right away, and that can bite them in the butt.
All right. So Anna, you heard that? I didn't say that. He said that. So
and I say it with love. There's no judgment whatsoever.
He said that. And you know what? This is free service right here. So be happy.
Exactly.
Exactly. That's my sister-in-law, so that's pretty funny.
Oh, okay. There we go. Well, you didn't say it. I did. I own it. I own it.
That's fine. You can go ahead and drop more, bro. What about Aquarius sun, Gemini moon, and Gemini rising?
Wow, that's also that's so interesting. That's 3 air signs. Sorry, that's 2 air signs, Gemini, but a lot of air energy. So those are air signs are much more cerebral, intellectual. They're very curious. They love to read. They love to exchange information. They love to debate. So with that kind of energy, I would imagine somebody who's also though very mutable. I would say very mutable, very quick. They probably get bored very quickly with things when you have that kind of, again, those are the 3 pillars. There's more to the birth chart, but those are the 3 pillars. So that's probably somebody who might multitask a lot. They might be fidgety. They might, be doing 3 things at once. When you have that much air energy, it can be hard to focus. So those are people who might work better like in 20-minute spurts. Whereas somebody had Taurus sun, Capricorn rising, Virgo moon, that is a very detail-oriented, very focused. They can work on something for 4 hours straight and, and just really do things very methodically, very slow. So that's kind of the difference between kind of more earth energy or more air energy.
Okay, and yeah, that was my fiance's. She's impatient. She's mean. No, just kidding.
But I would imagine, is she the Aquarius and Gemini stuff?
Yeah, she's the Aquarius sun, Gemini moon, and Gemini rising.
Okay, so a Gemini moon, Gemini moon, is she very chatty?
Not really. If we're being honest, not really.
Interesting.
She's more quiet.
So here's the thing. That's where we come into the whole chart, because here's one thing that happens. we have to look at how the planets are affecting your sun and your moon. Because, for example, I was talking about the 12 houses, right? The 12 slices of the pizza,
Oh, okay, okay.
right? Back to the pizza analogy here. So the 12th house is where things get really diluted and dissolve. So an Aries sun, again, Aries, if you read about Aries sun in general, dynamic, forceful, impatient, dynamic, all this stuff, assertive. But an Aries sun in the first house is where things are very visible. An Aries sun in the first house will manifest Aries qualities in a very vivid, bold way. An Aries sun in the 12th house, when the sun is in the 12th house, the sun being about my identity, my sense of self, who I am, the 12th house is like a cave. So when you have your sun in the 12th house, it's like all those qualities of your sun sign, they're a little bit more muted. Similarly, the planet Saturn is about restriction and being inhibited. So if you have your moon conjunct right next to Saturn, by that I mean, let's say that you have your moon at 9 degrees of Gemini and Saturn is right next to it at 8 degrees of Gemini, then it's like your moon has a hard time expressing itself. So that's also why we look at everything in the chart, because that determines by default, are you able to express your sun or your moon, or is that something that's difficult? And that's where we get into like the nuance and the specifics of even how there's two people who might have sun in Aries, moon in Gemini, and one of those people might be super Aries, super Gemini, and the other one is like, I have a really hard time expressing that part of me.
Okay, okay. I'm getting you. It, see, with me, I'm more scientific than more. Uh, is this spiritual? Would this be spiritual? Nah,
I
that's
don't
not
think
right,
it
right?
is.
No, that's not right.
Yeah, I don't think it is because, and actually, one cool thing about astrology is that I often tell my clients things like, because what'll often happen in a reading is, yes, I do more of the talking, but I tell my clients, please interact. I'm not doing a monologue. This is not like a stand-up show where you just sit in the audience and watch me talk.
Yeah.
A lot of times I'll start talking about something in their chart and they'll tell me, oh, for example, like I love to to journal about the dreams that I have. And I'll say, oh my God, that is so in your chart. And the cool thing about astrology is that I can tell somebody, I'm not just saying this because you told me. If you Google sun in the 12th house, my point is that there's a lot about astrology that's like a foundational knowledge. So it's not like every astrologer you go to, they may have their own personality and their own way of talking about it, but the principles are the same. Like every astrologer knows that Saturn is about restriction and inhibition.
Yeah.
No astrologer is going to say, oh, Saturn is about freedom. So that's the cool thing too, that there is a basis of knowledge that everybody can tap into, that is not just people making it up and saying, well, I feel, or I'm getting the sense that, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, you're not like a psychic or like you said earlier, or a tarot reader or something like that. Uh,
Yeah.
it's funny too that you said Saturn, right? Saturn is not all about freedom. Let's just say that's what you said.
Yep.
Doesn't Saturn have the rings? So like
It
that,
does.
yeah, so that made me think like of a wedding ring. You don't have no freedom. So I'm sure that wasn't
Well,
intentional, but that's what I thought of in my head when you said that.
and you know what's so interesting, actually? Saturn is a planet that rules commitment. Saturn rules things that we lay a foundation with, and that things that we commit to. So that's very interesting as well. And for example, Uranus has a very weird orbit, and that's why Uranus rules things that are alternative and outside the box. So there's a lot, Jupiter is the largest, and Jupiter is about expansion and growth. So you do see some of this reflected in the astronomy. And astrology is not astronomy, but to understand astrology, you have to understand astronomy, because in astrology, we talk about how fast the planets move. That's astronomical knowledge. So the things do blend a little bit. The difference being that astrology finds meaning to the stuff and astronomy doesn't at all.
Oh, okay. Yeah, astronomy is just the science, pretty much, right? The stats, like I was saying earlier, it's pretty much just the stats.
Correct. And by the way, a lot of times that question comes in of like, well, how does astrology even work? And my answer is, I don't know. I don't have an answer. Yeah, all I know is that it does, because when I'm talking to a client and I look at their chart and I ask them what was happening in like February, March of 2015 that looked like a horrendous time, and they go, oh my God, right? So it's like they know right away. I don't have an answer. There's theories as to how it works, but there is a bit of an unknown to it all. There's theories about, well, if you think about the fact, like, the moon affects the tides of the ocean, fine. But there is an element of where I don't feel the need from my ego to be like, well, this is exactly how it works. I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, that's kind of funny too, because, well, I work at the post office, and it's super exciting. I know. Relax. But so how right now is like election time and all the ballots and stuff, like all the so someone asked me today, like, hey, how come the recycling bin is not out here in the main lobby? And I told them, oh, I have to take it out because if people see that we're like, you guys are throwing all the election stuff in the recycling bin, if the news station comes in and like points the camera at the recycling bin, they're gonna be like, oh, hey, these people working here are just throwing away all the political stuff. They're trying to sway the votes.
Oh, yeah.
So that kind of I don't know why that reminded me of that. Like, it's just crazy.
I gotcha.
Yeah, I guess I want to talk about myself, huh?
Well, that Leo moon, as I was saying, they like recognition. I did want to ask you, when I was looking at your chart, and this is a more recent thing.
Yeah.
So talking about the speeds of the different things, right? So again, if you think about a chart as a circle, the moon goes around your chart every 28 and a half days. So in 28 and a half days, the moon goes completely 360 degrees. The sun takes a year. That's why your birthday is once a year, when the sun returns to where it was when you were born.
Facts.
Mars takes 2 years. What's that?
I said facts.
Exactly, right? Jupiter takes 12 years. Well, Pluto takes 244 years to go around the chart one time. So in astrology, whenever somebody is under the influence of a Pluto transit, we pay a lot of attention, because that's usually a time of significant change and transformation. It's all about metaphorical death and rebirth and metamorphosis and all this stuff. You had Pluto crossing a very sensitive part of your chart. And this is a once in a lifetime thing. It's not like it happens every 3 months, but it was in effect in 2 phases. One was from January 2019 to August 2019, and then again from December 2019 to actually February of 2021. Was that a time in your life when there was some kind of significant shift, maybe something coming to an end, some kind of significant new beginning? Because usually with Pluto doing this, there's a sense of like something. If you think of like, a caterpillar becoming a butterfly, there's that in-between phase of like, I'm not this, but I'm not that. So again, because that's once in a lifetime, in astrology, we pay a lot of attention to that.
So you said January 2019 to February
to August 2019 was one, and then December 2019, and it's going to be in effect until February of 21.
Let's see. I guess maybe if you wanted to say a shift to more like, let me think, because I'm kind of dumb, so it's kind of hard to remember like
That's right.
2 years ago. Nah, not even 2 years ago, 1 year ago. So during that time, so my birthday obviously is in February. Let's see. Now I think during that time, the only shift in my life really was I just started vacationing and partying more, I guess, because I was in Vegas around that time. Actually, I was kind of close to where you were. And
That was
then
in 2019. I mean, was there, because this affected a very sensitive angle of the chart that relates to relationships. So was there any change in a relationship in the first 8 months of 2019? Was there any, and especially then you had Saturn on that same part of your chart in December 2019 and January of 2020. So, that's a lot of that's a lot of astrological energy in that one part of your chart.
I
Um,
I guess
Go ahead.
maybe nah, maybe I was just working a lot during that time. If that did affect my relationship, maybe just I wasn't able to spend more time with my fiance. If you really wanted to dig deep into that, but other than that, nah, not really, man. My life is boring. I work a lot, dude. So
Yeah, well, but I mean, if because Saturn having to do with limitations and restrictions, I mean, is that what you're saying that your relation, like you weren't able to maybe spend as much time, that like there were other things kind of taking more precedence at that time, or?
maybe just the December part, but not
Hmm.
the January to the other part, because that time I actually me and my fiance we were living it up. We were doing good. Yeah, so
Yeah,
not really anything crazy.
yeah. So it's not to say that it was a bad time, but it would be a time when maybe the relationship, certain facets of it might have come under a shift or a transformation or just having, these are transits to talk about things getting more serious. So maybe there's a sense of like we're blending our lives more, or we're having conversations about like the future more as opposed to maybe being more casual. It can also be things like that.
Yeah. Well, my sister in law said engagement. I did get engaged in February. I guess that would have been 2 years ago. No, was it 2 years ago? Yeah, it was about like 2 years ago. But then for the rest of it, I don't know. Yeah, for the rest of it wasn't too much either. So
Hmm.
yeah, man. I don't know. Like I said, dude. I'm sorry. I'm probably gonna ruin your charts because I'm a pretty random, boring guy. But yeah, I guess I'm gonna hear. Now they're gonna tell me a whole bunch of stuff. Oh, that's when you got engaged. This and that. but
Well, what's interesting about your chart, by the way, that you have talking about Saturn. So you have your sun, my identity, my sense of self.
not a physical son.
What's that? Yeah, no, yeah. SUN. I don't want. This is not Maury Povich. We're not doing DNA tests. Everybody, calm down. You are not the father.
Oh, thank God.
Um, yeah. But you have your SUN at 17 degrees of Aquarius, and you have Saturn at 20 degrees of Aquarius, right next to your sun. Well, Saturn is like this influence that can be very serious. Saturn gets serious, and Saturn can get very like a little bit pessimistic. Saturn is a little bit maybe can second guess itself. So when you have the Sun conjunct Saturn, you have somebody who, to your point, they're very like Saturnian in nature. They kind of are not looking, they're not necessarily the life of the party all the time. Like at times they might actually be a little bit pessimistic. And because the sun rules the father, and when we talk about the parents in astrology, we're talking about the relationship with them when we were children, not so much as adults. But Sun conjunct Saturn can also give a father who maybe was a little bit distant, or maybe wasn't quite. And maybe, Saturn is very much about being a taskmaster and responsible. So maybe there was that element of the relationship, but there was a little bit here about you feeling like you had to maybe grow up quickly, or that you felt like you had to perform, or it wasn't the most like touchy feely emotional relationship.
Uh, I don't know about grow up quickly. I'm still pretty immature. But when it comes to the relationship part, I mean, we've been together for it's going on 8 years now. That would have been
Mm-hmm.
what 6 years into it. So I mean, I didn't really I don't see myself really growing into the like saying I grew up quickly because this is something that we were waiting on for a while. Well, not her, me pretty much.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't want to get engaged before I felt like well, I guess maybe you can say. But I didn't want to get engaged to her before I felt like I was ready to be that special person in her life. Like I guess myself, I didn't feel it's not that I wasn't ready. It's just that, and not that I wasn't worthy, but I wanted to make sure I was on a certain level before I went ahead and
Mm-hmm.
locked her up because I
So I would say, that is very Saturn, because Saturn is about responsibility and maturity. And I know you're saying that you might not see that, but the way you talk about that, this idea of like, I wanted to be ready and I wanted things to be a certain way. That's very Saturn, because Saturn is about commitment and things that are serious, things that have a foundation. If you had Jupiter, which is the opposite of Saturn, next to your sun, that would be somebody who's like, oh, who cares? Let's just get married after 6 months. We'll throw a huge party. That's not Saturn. Saturn's like, let's get everything in order. Let's make sure that everything feels stable. You see what I mean?
Is that because Jupiter is stupider?
well. Now that we're talking about pronunciation, you know, what that reminds me of that there's a reason why in astrology we call the planet Uranus.
Yeah, I was about to ask, dude. That's what I was gonna ask you. Is like, why not Uranus?
Precisely for that, because if I start talking about Uranus in the 8th house, let's not even go there. We'll just call it Uranus. Get your mind out of the gutter. You know what I mean?
And then you said it. You said Uranus isn't big, and I felt offended, bro. I was like, what? But yeah. So I know I noticed that, and I completely forgot about it because we were talking about something else. But,
yeah. So that's an old school astrologer trick. I guess at some point, like whoever, you know, the guild of astrologers decided we're gonna call it Uranus, and we all just went with it.
They wanted to be taken a little more serious, right?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you, was I pronouncing it wrong this whole time? I thought that's how you said it, but all right.
Yeah, you know what's funny? I wonder how astronomers pronounce it, because maybe I'll have to go back and check. That would be interesting. But randomly, what this brought up is when we talk about astrology, a lot of people's exposure to it is about like the daily horoscope in the back of a newspaper. And actually in astrology, when I work with a client, we're looking at the long-term cycles of the slow-moving planet. So day to day, there's not going to be much change, because again, like if you're under a Pluto transit, that lasts a year and a half. So even weekly, things are not going to change that much. So the way that I work with it is that I'm more talking about what are the main things affecting you for the whole year, as opposed to just for a day.
Oh, okay, yeah. No, that's good. Especially because, you know, day to day things can change so crazy, but over the year you kind of have like a general idea of what's going on with your life, right?
Yeah, and also, you know, day to day, sometimes, you know, some astrology like columns or whatever, horoscopes, they're written in a way that isn't even has anything to do with astrology. Like you know, when you might read things like today a brown-haired stranger, and it's like, well, that has nothing to do with astrology. Like I can't tell somebody's hair color based on a chart. So that's the other problem too, that astrology has become kind of so bastardized, because a lot of times people think that if I'm an astrologer, it means that I read tarot cards. Those are totally different things. Astrology and numerology, totally different things. Some people think that astrology is like telling people their fortune. That's not it either. So that's what I was saying about making it practical and easy to understand. There's so much confusion about what it is. Astrology will never tell you. If somebody asked me, what's going to happen to me on April 7th of 2022? I'm like, I don't know. That's not what it is.
Yeah.
You know, the best analogy I use is that it's kind of like a weather forecast. It simply tells you like the vibe, and then you decide what you want to do. So case in point, if you were to learn that the next 5 days is going to be rain nonstop, you probably won't be planning to have a picnic, because that probably won't be very fun. But you decide. Same thing with astrology. I tell you the landscape, and I'm kind of like a GPS. What I tell you is, look, you're here. If you want to get over here, here's the shortest path. But there's 10 different paths. Now, this one that you might want to take has a huge traffic jam. You're going to take 4 times as long, but you're in the driver's seat. The most that I do is give you like, you know, like a lay of the land and show you how to get to where you want to get. But I don't make your decisions, and neither do the planets. You then make the call. So I practice what I call free will astrology. We're not puppets on a string. We make our own choices. But, you know, again, it's like you can make certain choices that feel like you're rowing against the current, and then you just don't go anywhere and you're exhausted. Or you can choose to row with the current, and then you'll get there more quickly, and you're not wasting your time.
Hell yeah, that's a good way to summarize that. Pretty much, what you're saying is you're not a fortune cookie, right?
Yeah, yeah. I don't give lottery numbers. Sorry about it.
Damn. I thought I was going to win big, bro.
I
Sorry
don't
about all
have
the.
the power button.
I guess I realized though I have a bunch of food analogies. I don't know.
Which I love. I mean, listen, me being in nutrition, I'm all about the food analogies. I love it. Bring
Dang,
it.
everything I'm saying is kind of bad, right? Pizza, cookies. It looks like Christian Jimenez from YouTube. They're saying they're a Cancer Sun Pluto. LOL.
Oh,
Oh,
okay. Well, that's a biggie. Pluto. As I was saying, every planet rules different things, right? So Pluto rules things like nuclear power. Pluto is super intense. Um, that's why Pluto rules things like death and metamorphosis. And Pluto also rules whatever is hidden underground. So like oil is ruled by Pluto because to get oil, you got to dig really deep. So when you have Sun Pluto, that's somebody who can be who needs a lot of intensity. They can also be very good at probing. So things like research, detective work, those are like things. Even psychotherapy is very Pluto. In psychotherapy, you're like digging deep and really going in there. A lot of times people with Sun Pluto and where or
hold
the
on, real quick. You're kind of cutting out. I don't know if it's your internet or the computer.
sure. Do you want me to start over or
Give it a quick second. I guess let it buffer, or I don't know. Maybe your internet catch up. Okay, so
yeah.
you said you where you left off was Pluto was like digging into oil, digging deep into oil.
Oh, yeah. Pluto rules whatever is underground, things like oil, because Pluto's about digging deep. That's why, like, psychotherapy is ruled by Pluto and all, and detective work and researching. But what I was saying is that when people have the Sun and Pluto interacting in some way, but especially the square or the opposition, and I don't like to get jargony, so let me break that down. A square means that they're 90 degrees away from each other. Opposition means they're 180 degrees away from each other. But when there's especially a challenging aspect, like a square or an opposition with Sun and Pluto, that can usually be a father figure. Because again, Sun is a father who was very like a tyrant, an authority figure who was very strict. There's usually some father issues to work out there with when you have the Sun and Pluto interacting. I've seen a lot of my clients who have that had fathers who were very domineering, who kind of like made their children in a way kind of feel a little bit powerless at times. So when you have Sun Pluto challenges, you have to watch the default of your chart, which can be to give away your power very quickly, or conversely, to then kind of make up for lost time and you become this like domineering like bulldozer. So with Sun Pluto, you got to really find that balance between not giving away your power, but also not being so obsessed with it where you're like, I have to, rule the roost and I have to like tell everybody how it is. But at their best, Sun Pluto people, they can be relentless in a good way. These are the people who work 14 hours a day, 7 days a week, and they just never stop. So you got to tap into it in that way.
I like how you saved it right there at the end. Christian Jimenez, you're not a bad person.
Not at all.
And
It's always
uh, you need to chill out on Pluto, bro.
listen. You got to tell Pluto to cool it. I'm just telling you what's going on. Pluto just has a reputation, but like I said, every planet has good and bad qualities, and what determines which ones you can tap into more easily is the angles in the chart. Because Pluto is also, people who transform things are very Pluto. They can be very powerful in a good way. So there's no such thing as a bad sign or a bad planet. They're all a mixed bag.
And I think Pluto's the coldest. Well, it's not even a planet anymore. But isn't Pluto very cold?
Well, exactly, and that's why Pluto is that really intense, because Pluto doesn't really doesn't kind of warm up to things. Like Pluto is very much like, at its worst, it can be like, I don't give a shit how you feel.
Dang.
So when you have Pluto and the Sun, you got to watch maybe a little bit of coldness. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I get it. Growing up in school, did they tell you that Pluto was a planet? You remember that?
They did, because I went to school in the 90s, in the 80s and 90s.
Okay.
But there's in 2006, I believe, is when astronomers started saying that. Well, so Pluto got demoted to like a dwarf planet.
Yeah.
But in astrology, Pluto is, again, anytime somebody's going through a Pluto transit, I bring it up to them, they know exactly what I'm talking about. So I see Pluto as a very powerful thing in astrology. That's never going to change.
Yeah, and then well, we talk about the sun too, right? So obviously the sun's not a planet, so like, I
Right,
get
and
it.
now there's moon. Yeah, totally. And by the way, then there's like this other facet of astrology with the asteroids. I don't use that many, but there's even, there's asteroid astrology. There's so much stuff to it. But I always tell people who want to learn, if you're looking to learn astrology, just stick with the planets first. Like if you go down the rabbit hole of like 100 asteroids, you don't need to waste your time with that at first. Just learn the basics and then you can move on.
Yeah. No, I agree. I'm not gonna ask you all about the different. We're not gonna go that deep today. Maybe another day, huh?
Yeah.
I was gonna ask you if. Well, Chris Jimenez says he works 13-hour shift. That's from his from him being
Ah,
the. I guess
very
Italian.
Pluto. Yep.
So how, I was
Yep.
gonna ask you, can you kind of show us how to read a birth chart? Just a small example.
Walk you through it?
Yeah,
Like walk you through it?
yeah. Without charging me.
Sure. Okay, maybe. Well, so kind of like you're asking, like when I first look at a chart, how do I start piecing all this together?
Yeah. You want to use my information as an example, I guess, just because why
Yeah.
not?
Yeah. Well, so here's what I always look at. Well, I always start with what's called the elemental balance. So there's 4 elements: fire, air, earth, and water. There's 12 signs. There's 4 elements. So some basic math, and I was not a big math person, but like 4th grade math, that means that every element has 3 signs, right? So fire, Aries, Leo, Sagittarius; air, Gemini, Libra, Aquarius, etc. So oftentimes I start looking there first. That's like my big 30,000 foot view picture. So in your case, there's a lot of fire, there's a good amount of air, and not that much earth. You only have 2 things in earth. So what that means, again, earth energy is the very like structured, organized, like things are this way and they've always been done this way, so I'm going to keep doing them this way. You have more fire and air, so that goes back to you need more freedom. You can more easily feel suffocated by too many rules or too much structure, and you need creativity.
So I'm like a hot air balloon.
Oh, I like that. Yeah. Oh, I'm gonna steal that, just so you know.
Go for it.
Steal that for my readings. I love that. Yeah, fire and air. Totally, exactly. So I now half my clients have a very balanced. I don't have a balanced elemental thing in my chart. I also don't have a lot of earth. So I start there to see, is there anything kind of missing or low? That gives me an idea. And then I go to the 3 pillars: sun, moon, rising sign. I look at the sign that they're in, the house that they're in. And you have your sun in the 8th house. The 8th house is a very private house.
Shout out to 8th house. Let's go.
Holla. 8th house in the hizzy. So the 8th house is very private. The 8th house is the 8th house is relates to Scorpio, and therefore it has to do with Pluto. So people with 8th house suns are not the most open books. Like there's definitely something there about being very careful about who they let in. There's other suns that are, other suns like a 10th house sun or a 1st house sun those are the people who you meet them and within 20 minutes, they're really sharing very personal things about themselves. The 8th house sun is more like, you gotta like I need to get to know you pretty well before you get access to like this part of me. So that's why the house really matters. And the way I talk about it is, if you think of like the sun as a white light bulb, the 12 different houses are like a different color lampshade, right? So if you have a white light bulb behind a red lampshade versus a blue lampshade, that affects how that light comes out, so to speak. So that's why the houses matter. They act as filters. I also look at then what are the planets doing to that sun. So in your case, with the sun conjunct Saturn next to Saturn, you have that Saturn influence that can be that can hold itself back, that needs sometimes a little bit of a nudge to get things going, because Saturn can be very self-critical. So people with the sun conjunct Saturn, they can struggle a little bit with like, I don't know if maybe I should say that because it might sound dumb, or I don't know if I should do that because I don't know if I'm ready, that kind of thing. But on the plus side, with a sun conjunct Saturn, I don't see a very impulsive thing here. I think that there's a whole thing of like, let me make sure that I at least know what I'm doing first, because Saturn is that whole thing of like pausing and making sure that you kind of look at the map before you start racing to your destination.
Yeah, so a little bit more with me. I guess maybe not like, maybe I should do this, not do this. Maybe I think more with me, it's a little more like, I'll do it later. More like procrastination instead of more the laziness. And I'm not really afraid to speak my mind, but at the same time, I kind of am. Like you said, I kind of do restrain myself sometimes depending on the situation and the place. So,
and that's where, we need, and part of astrology and doing a reading is putting it all together, because we do have the Saturn conjunct Sun, but we have a Leo moon in the first house. So what that can mean is that with a Leo moon in the first, and the Leo moon liking attention and being creative, that speaks to maybe like, I don't mind talking about things that aren't very personal, but when it comes to my sun, my sense of self, there's more of that protective Saturn thing. So that can talk about how in this one part of my life, I'm more kind of Saturn. In this other part of my life, I'm more of this Leo, like I want to be, behind a microphone hosting a podcast. But it's not a podcast where you're sharing you're most like into, you're not talking about personal things. There's other podcasts that are like that. This is more into your Aquarius thing of like people and things about them. So do you see?
Yeah. Hold on. You're cutting out real quick again. But yeah. So no.
Mercury.
Yeah, it's okay. Are you on Wi-Fi or are you on like Ethernet cable?
No, I'm on Wi-Fi, but I was saying, right now the planet Mercury is in retrograde.
Oh, okay.
And have you heard of that term?
Retrograde?
Like Mercury retrograde? Have you heard that?
No, I'm pretty dumb when it comes to that.
Oh, okay. No worries. See, there's Saturn coming out saying I'm dumb. Yeah. That's a very Saturn thing. Saturn is very critical with itself. You got to watch that.
Well, no, I got to say I'm dumb, so that way if I say something dumb, people can't hold it against me.
So I want to talk about retrogrades pretty quickly, and then I can come back to how you read a chart. But
no, that's fine.
So planets, okay, retrograde means moving backwards, but planets don't ever move backwards. That's just a kind of an optical illusion from Earth. In the same way that if you are driving on the highway and you're going 70 miles an hour and the car next to you is going 50, when you pass that car, it can look like the car is moving backwards. It's not, you're just going faster than it. That's the thing with retrograde planets. It looks like they're moving backwards, but they're not. But the point is, Mercury rules communication and speech and electronics. 3 times a year for 3 weeks at a time, Mercury appears to move backwards. Right now, we're in Mercury retrograde. It started on October 13th, and it wraps up November 3rd. Very common when Mercury is retrograde is glitches, electronics not working, internet issues, things get delayed, things get canceled. So I was kind of joking that Mercury is retrograde, and that's why I'm cutting out.
Okay, yeah, now I get it. And don't bring that negative energy here, bro. Take that out of your chart. Take that out of my chart. When did you say it starts? October 13th?
It started October 13th. And what happens is that it's kind of in the same way that, when you make a U-turn, it's not like planets suddenly are moving forward and then they move backwards. They start slowing down and then they change direction and then they slow down again and reverse. So Mercury started moving backwards, quote unquote, October 13th. But about 10 days before that, it started slowing down. So you start kind of feeling the effects around then. Now, what's interesting is Mercury is at its most volatile the day it changes direction. And on November 3rd, at around, I believe around 10 a.m. Eastern time, Mercury changes direction from moving backwards to moving forward. Well, November 3rd is election day. When we had the election in the year 2000, when there was that whole thing of like, who won Florida and all that confusion, Mercury was retrograde. So I'm saying that because in astrology, if you want to get a sense for what a day will be like, we look at what Mercury is doing. Wouldn't surprise me if on election day, there's a little bit of confusion and a little bit of chaos, which is very Mercury retrograde, about maybe a certain state not being clear who won or something like that. So that's interesting as well.
That is interesting for two reasons. I guess my past two episodes, my computer's been acting up. So
there we go.
It's also part of something I had to figure out too, and I didn't figure it out till last episode. Ironically, with someone that builds computers, so he didn't help me, but I figured it out on that episode. And
nice.
And then on this Call of Duty game I've been playing, it is a Tuesday where they end the Halloween thing. So I just thought that was pretty funny. They have like a Halloween theme, and then I was thinking of the elections too. So
yeah,
so that's crazy.
And to be clear, there's also good things about Mercury retrograde. It's not all bad. It's very common when Mercury is retrograde that you hear from people from your past, like randomly, somebody who you haven't spoken to in 2 years will text you, or you'll run into somebody you haven't seen in a while out and about. It's also a very good time to do anything that starts with the letters RE. So restarting, revising, it's a good time to go back and reassess. So it's not all bad stuff. It's
bars.
Just not the best. What's that?
I said bars.
Right, exactly. Just not the best time to, especially what I recommend is a lot of times if you purchase electronics when Mercury is retrograde, they don't work very well. So again, it's a mixed bag, but it can be really good for some things.
Bro, that reminds me, I bought something and it says that they postponed the shipment till like next month too, bro. That's crazy.
There you go.
That's crazy.
Mercury retrograde.
Why didn't you tell me this before?
Well, listen, if you all follow me on Instagram, I give you heads up about all this. Follow me at Astrology with Andy.
All right, for sure. You can shout it out anytime you want, and at the end, I'll give you a special section to shout out any of your socials. I'm also gonna drop all your stuff in the
nice
description below.
Cool.
Help you. Help me, I gotta help you, bro.
Sounds good. I love it.
But before I forget about this too, this is kind of random, but you made me think about angel numbers. My fiance is always telling me about them. What do you think about them? Like, what is an angel number, real quick, and then what do you think about them?
Yeah, and so this is not really astrology, but I know because I'm into all this other stuff, so I can talk about it. So it's the idea of, for example, that if you see the numbers 111 or 1111 or 222, there's this belief that is your spirit guides connecting with you. And I do believe, and this is where I know I can get a little woo-woo, but I do think that we all do have spirit guides. And by that I mean, it goes back to what you were talking about earlier. What some people call intuition, or when you just get this sense. That to me is that you are tapping into something outside of our realm. And again, I think that many times, for example, if you're thinking about something, you happen to catch a glimpse of certain number combinations, the idea is that your spirit guides are communicating with you and letting you know that that thing you're thinking about is important or you should go through with it. So that's not related to astrology, but I definitely do believe that we all can tap. And look, I'm a very science-based person. I studied nutrition. I studied, that's a science. And I realize that these are all things that it's like, well, at the end of the day, you believe in it or not. And listen, I respect that some people might say astrology is a bunch of bullshit. I'm not interested in having a debate. I'm not interested in trying to convince you. If you don't believe in it and you don't think it's for you, then it's not for you. I'm not trying to like go on a quest of having everybody in the world believe in this. If you don't, it's all good.
Yeah, exactly. And if you want to pay money and argue with them, then go ahead for an hour and a half, right?
Yeah, but that's the thing. Yeah, but to your point, yeah, I would never, even if somebody was like, I want to buy a reading with you to debate, I'm like, well, no, I'm not going to do that. Like,
Yeah.
to be a space of positive energy. But also, again, I respect that there's different beliefs. So it's all good.
Yeah.
I think there's something for everybody.
And that's why I wanted you on here too, because I wanted people to see, what you do and what you're all about, and in a way, since you deal with astrology, what astrology is all about, and whether they believe if it's a pseudoscience or not, or if it's complete baloney. At least they'll be able to see your side of it and hopefully understand a different perspective on it.
Yeah, and that's why the way that I describe astrology is that ultimately, I think I might have said this before, but it's one of many tools. It's like, when you have a toolbox, you have 20 different tools in there. This is not meant to be the end all be all. I have a disclaimer, and now I have to have it legally, but I also believe it very seriously. Astrology is not supposed to replace psychotherapy. It is not financial. If you need therapy, you need to go to a licensed therapist. If you need business advice, you have to go to a financial advisor. Astrology is not supposed to replace all of that, in the same way that, I have a plumber and I have a dentist and I have an eye doctor. I'm not going to ask my eye doctor to fix my pipes. I'm not going to ask my plumber to prescribe contact lenses. Like, you need to know your lane. All I am, again, is I give you the big picture and I'm happy to help and give insight. But astrology is just one of many tools. It does not have all the answers. So I think that's also really important. Like, you should not put all your eggs in the astrology basket.
Okay, so have a certain expectation when you go do that, right?
Yeah, exactly. And again, it's not fortune telling. But a lot of people do tell me, and I get why. A lot of my clients tell me, wow, they're like, that felt like 90 minutes of therapy. And it's because in astrology, depending on your chart, things that come up will be about your childhood. And it might be about what you experienced as a child. We're not doing therapy by any means, but astrology is not me telling somebody, oh, you're really quirky and your favorite food is chocolate. It's not that kind of nonsense. Like, we talk about serious things.
Yeah.
So that's why I tell people it's almost like an X-ray of your soul and your emotion. So if you're going to get a reading, you have to be prepared to really open up about things that will show up in the chart that, that may also challenge you a little bit. Because in astrology, you might talk about how you have difficulty expressing your emotions, right? Or you might talk about how you might have anger issues or how you have confidence issues. So it's meant to be prescriptive and helpful. I don't judge anybody. You're not blamed for anything, but you are talked to about, here's what you do really well, and here's your blind spots. So that's, we do a little bit of everything.
Yeah, and that's why you don't want them to be, I guess, like a mirror, like a one-way conversation. That's why you want them to talk back, right? You don't want to be talking to yourself, a mirror. And
completely. And also because, like I said, it's not a psychic reading. So I might say, you have this in your chart, and this can manifest in one of two ways. Which one resonates with you?
Yeah.
So it's like a dialogue.
Yeah, no, that's pretty cool. I like that. It's like a little blueprint almost, like a kind of like a choose your adventure book.
Yeah.
And so, speaking of choosing your adventure, what would be a good reason to go do a session with astrology with Andy?
Yeah, I would say, and here's what's so fascinating because about 90% of my clients are people who have never had a birth chart reading before, people who don't know their chart and don't know astrology. And almost every time, whenever a new client comes in, and without them knowing, because they don't know their chart, they're coming to me at a time when they are having major shifts in about 3 to 6 months. It's almost like people subconsciously know that they're about to enter a significant part of their life and they need some guidance. So, what I would say is that if you just need some clarity, if you want to understand yourself better, if you find that you kind of keep getting in these ruts where it's like, the same bullshit, but with different people or in different environments, if you want to know more about your potential, these are all things that an astrology reading can help you with. What I will say when it's not a good time to get a reading is if you just went through something huge, like I'm talking about a week ago, it's all too fresh. So there's times when I do recommend getting a reading also when you're ready to hear things. Because again, an astrology reading, I don't judge anybody, you're not blamed, but it's also not 90 minutes of me telling you how amazing you are and how everybody's doing you wrong. You need to be ready to really get a very objective assessment about yourself. And sometimes we're at a place in our life and we're not ready to hear that. I got to tell you, when I was going through my addiction, I don't know if I could, and granted, I already knew astrology, but when I was going through my addiction, I was in a lot of denial, a lot of pain. I don't know how much help an astrology reading would have been because I wasn't ready to face certain parts of me. And that's okay if you're not ready. But I do think there's better times to do it and times when maybe you're not quite ready, and that's fine.
So pretty much, you. I think that's a little worse in your case, like because you know how you do astrology. You pretty much knew you had to kind of be open with yourself at that time. And so that probably made it a little worse for yourself because you're like, well, I know that I have to face my problems, but I'm gonna kind of try to steer away from it or distract myself from it in a different way. Does that kind of like, is that a different kind of burden you feel sometimes on yourself, knowing that you should be a little more open, I guess, or true?
You're so right about that because what was happening at the time when I was in my gambling addiction is that I had a 5-year transit from Neptune. And Neptune's whole thing is to teach you vulnerability. That's why Neptune rules addictions. Neptune rules escape. Because when a planet comes to your chart, you have one of two choices. Either accept the planet with open arms and be like, all right, I'm open to whatever you want to teach me. Or again, you have free will. You can say, fuck off. I don't want nothing to do with you. But then you got to deal with consequences. So I knew I'm under a Neptune transit. I'm supposed to be vulnerable and not feel like I have to have everything under control. And that was hard for me because my chart with my Virgo moon, I'm all about control and I don't want to show vulnerability and I don't want to show emotions. So yes, even knowing my chart, I still struggled. And that shows you again that we all have free will. And my goal is to help people navigate. So I can tell you, look, you decide what you want to do, but I would highly recommend navigating it this way to prevent unnecessary bullshit. But we all ultimately make decisions.
Yeah, and you could tell them too, like, hey, I see that you want to do it this way, which you might not recommend. So if you want to do it this way, maybe keep an eye out or look out for this, right? Maybe
Totally.
give them
Totally.
little floaties so they don't drown in the deep
Yeah,
end.
right. And to be
um,
clear, because I
yeah.
want to make this very clear, I didn't develop a gambling addiction because Neptune caused it. My inability to navigate a transit in the way that would have been more in line with it. Again, it was my actions. Be clear, we're not puppets to the planet. The planets don't cause us to do anything. They just bring up situations that then require certain action from us. So I'm always very clear. Nobody here is at the mercy of a planet light years away.
Yeah. No, I get it. I like that too. That way, you have to take responsibility for yourself. You can't just blame like something else. And
Totally.
like you said, it's more like a guideline that more than anything. Um, so you know how I told you I kind of did some studying. Um,
Nice.
I saw something they were saying that if your planets align more west or more east, that determines whether your life is pretty much written, like it's pretty much written, or that you decide your own fate. Is that true?
Mm. It's not untrue, but here's how I say it. So, by the way, when you look at a birth chart, it's the opposite of how you would look at a map. So, at a birth chart, the top half is south and the bottom half is north. The left is east and the right is west. It's a little bit crazy. But the way that I talk about it, that if you have more of an Eastern influence in your chart, you're more somebody who who does things their own way and likes more independence and prefers to do things solo. Whereas, and that your destiny, so to speak, is more about your own decisions. Whereas when you have more of a an Eastern influence, of a Western influence, I'm sorry, that's more somebody whose journey requires more relationships and collaboration and working with others. So it's not that other people make decisions for you, but I feel like, we can have very different journeys. Some people's journeys are very self-sustained, where you go through your own shit and it's about you figuring out your stuff and nobody can really do much for you. There's other charts where your whole journey is about, maybe you get a lot of lucky breaks from other people, or maybe you end up, as a result of meeting somebody, your life really changes. So it's more that, I would say, than more about your destiny.
Okay, and either maybe they worded it wrong, because I'm not to blame here.
Not at all.
No,
Not
no,
blaming
I'm
you.
just saying, or maybe I interpret it wrong. But that's what I kind of understood from it, and I'm kind of glad you clarified it.
Mhm.
Where would you say where would I align on that, or do your research?
So, yeah, I mean, you have more of a Western emphasis on your chart, which means that a lot of your journey or your astrological journey depends, or not depends on, but is better suited to you. Kind of like it means that in order to get to know yourself better, you actually find things about yourself by relating to others more so than by being, by being this very solitary person. So you have more of a Western emphasis because you have one, two, three, four. You have seven. So 7 of 12 things on that part of your chart. So it's more of an emphasis in that direction.
I feel like that's a high score, so I'm gonna take that. um, I don't know. It is kind of tricky because I like talking to people. I like hanging out with people. I like it is true. People do help me feel better about myself sometimes. Like if I'm going through something, like I'd rather like yeah, you know what, this sucks. I'm not feeling good, but I'd rather be with someone and having a good time and having that in the background. But I also like being by myself. I do like I don't like to not burden people with my problems, but like hey, you know what? It's my problem. I'm gonna figure it out. I'm gonna get through it. So I don't know
Hmm.
exactly if if I align it with anything like that either.
Yeah, so that's again where we blend things together because you do have that emphasis in your chart. You also have the moon in the first house. Moon is emotional needs, and the first house is the house of me.
Well,
So it's
I don't got emotions. I'm a strong man. I didn't watch Disney when I was young. Yeah,
uh-oh,
just kidding.
uh-oh.
Nah, just
Well,
kidding.
no, I know. I'm just saying. Well, astrology reminds us, by the way, that we all have masculine and feminine, because the moon and Venus are feminine planets.
All masculine here, bro.
But it reminds us that we all have a mix, right? But what's interesting about your chart is that you have Mars also in the 12th house, and it's retrograde and it's in Cancer. Very quickly, I want to talk about that because Mars is the gas pedal. Mars is drive. Mars is my desires. As I was saying earlier, in the 12th house, things get diluted. And if you think of Mars as a fireball, the 12th house is like a huge ocean. So if you throw a fireball into the ocean, it kind of gets watered down. A lot of times people with Mars in the 12th, what I remind them of is they need to stop once in a while and ask themselves, am I doing this because I actually want to do it? Or am I doing this because I kind of have taken on other people's expectations, or I've taken on other people's desires and kind of convinced myself that is what I want to do? But if I think about it, it's not really. So Mars in the 12th, it's almost like our desires and what we want can get kind of watered down. So it's really important to always make sure that you're not just doing things because it's what you're maybe supposed to do, and actually checking in that it's what you truly want to do. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. Not kind of like almost a peer pressure thing. On Mars, I'm going into the 12th house, which is a party house, and maybe I might do something dumb that I don't want to do.
It's very funny because the 12th house, the 12th house is among other things the house of where we can let other people like not tell us what to do, but we can very easily fall prey to like going with the flow
or persuade you a little bit.
Yeah. And especially Mars retrograde. So when you were born, Mars was, again, quote unquote, moving backwards. And with Mars retrograde, it's almost like, again, like that assertiveness thing or standing out can be a little bit, we were more like, well, let me just go with the flow. Not a bad thing, because with Mars retrograde, for example, you can be maybe Mars in the 12th. You might be good at diffusing things and de-escalating. But at the same time, sometimes you need to just like set a boundary and be like, I don't want to do that. And that can be difficult initially when you have that placement.
I say, yeah, that sounds like me. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. And then at the same time, dude, if it's on, it's on. whatever you put into that. But honestly, I don't like I don't like confrontation, but I'd rather not have a crazy confrontation. I'd rather it just be, chill.
You don't thrive on it. There's other Mars places, Mars and Aries. They kind of need a little bit of that to make them feel alive almost. And Mars retrograde in Cancer in the 12th is like, I'd rather not.
Hey, so you live in Vegas, right?
I do.
So I thought of this crazy idea. You should open up a bar. You can call it the 12th house. You can have your drinks, named after different planets, name, everything with astrology. Maybe have like the sky, on the roof painted, or the galaxy.
Yeah.
And just just have a theme like that, man.
By the way, I mean, it's crazy. You said some things in the past like 2 hours almost that really resonate, because the 12th house is ruled by Neptune, and Neptune rules substances like alcohol. So calling a bar the 12th house is genius.
Hell yeah, that's all I got, dude. That's all I got all day.
No, but listen, that's great. That's so in line with that's very 12th house, yeah.
And it's funny because you don't drink.
Like, I don't, and not because. And listen, the only addiction I have is to gambling. So it's not like I'm not in AA as well, but I don't really like the flavor of alcohol. Like once in a while, I might drink, but yeah, that's why my beverage of choice today was coffee.
Coffee.
With love.
What Kahlua or what?
No, just almond milk.
Oh, damn, you wild, bro. You wild.
It's a party night.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's crazy when you think of like, you hear someone that lives in Vegas, you think they'd be like, do you like to go out well, right now it doesn't really count, but do you like to go out to the clubs and stuff? Is that your type of vibe or?
It's funny you say that because I'm more of an introvert, and ironically, when I was in my gambling stuff, I was not social at all because I felt I wasn't in a good place. But once I started my recovery, it was almost like my life restarted again. And for about a year before COVID hit, I was enjoying going out. And then COVID hit and it was all over. But yeah, I do enjoy it. And one great thing about Vegas that I will say is that back again before COVID, it was like, because I'm from Argentina. I lived in Venezuela. Like I moved a lot as a child. So I have friends all over the world. And as a result, I would say every 2 weeks I get a text or a DM. Hey, I'm going to be in Vegas for a wedding. I'm going to be in Vegas for a work conference. I'm driving to Utah and I'm going to stop in Vegas. So it was a really great way to reconnect with people. even, you know, I lived in New York for 10 years. I had more people, and nobody was staying with me. They were staying on the strip, but I met up with so many more people here in Vegas than even in New York.
Yeah, hell yeah.
Yeah.
Um, it's crazy because one good thing about me doing this is I meet people like, well, not worldwide yet, but that's kind of lined up. But so my first guest was from Florida. Joshua Michael Nam, Import Image Racing. Let's go. I get my car parts from him. Uh,
Nice.
so he's in Florida. You're in Vegas. I had a couple people from LA. I had some in my right here in my area, Monterey, San Jose. Um, geez, my last guest, Steven Prugar. Where was he from? Somewhere in the middle. Illinois. He was from Illinois because I think he's a Steelers fan. So he was in
Okay.
Illinois by Ohio. So
Cool.
yeah, it's pretty cool because now I feel like I'm ever in those towns or in the area, I can hit up people and be like, hey, you know, you want to go grab a drink or you want to hang out for like an hour or two, just catch up, you know.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
like that.
Totally.
So if I'm ever in Vegas, which I'm gonna be for two reasons, obviously I'm a Raiders fan, so I got to go catch a game eventually over there,
Exactly.
and then
Yes.
I just like to go, you know, every once in a while too, maybe once or twice every once at least one or twice a year, you know, it's Vegas, you got to go enjoy it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And, you know, I got to tell you too, one thing about my readings is that, you know, I have clients all over the country. I even have a few outside of the country. Like I have clients in Canada, England, Turkey, Australia. And to your point, it's cool because I feel like I get to know these people. And I always tell my clients too, and I sincerely mean this. I'm like, you know, I want to hear how all this plays out in the next year, year and a half. So to me, it's not like I'm like, okay, well, nice knowing you. See you never. It's almost like in a way, I do bond with these people. Because again, in a birth chart, you get to know somebody really well and you have very rich conversations. So it's a cool way to, especially during COVID in a way, it's been like my social
yeah,
in some ways, you know?
because you can't meet up face to face because the whole, you know, the COVID thing. Um, yeah, and I feel like everyone that I've had on this show, I've you know, I had a good connection with them, and I feel like I could hang out with them in person whenever I was
Totally.
I was in LA like I'm just gonna say a month ago. I don't even dude, time's passing by so fast, it's crazy.
I
But
know.
I couldn't hit up anyone that I met from LA like because the whole COVID thing, you know. I really wanted to go see them, but for sure when this is over, I'm gonna hang out with people and like it doesn't even gotta be like you know you don't drink like we can go you know do whatever the heck sounds cool at
Yeah.
that time.
And by the way, like, I mean, it's one of those things where pretty much all my friends drink. So, you know, I don't mind going to a bar.
Yeah,
It's not like I'm like, I will not set foot in a bar. But, you know, I'm just not the kind of person who you can, like, you know, have like 8 beers with because
yeah.
that's just not.
Oh,
But
okay. We'll have seven. We'll have seven.
there we go. I'll gladly watch you drink 7 beers while I have like something else that's not alcoholic. But yeah, all good.
Hey, everyone needs a designated driver, right?
There we go. Yeah.
Hey,
I've played that role many times.
that way when I'm seeing stars when I'm on the ground, you know, you can help me guide through them.
Exactly. There you go. Yeah, yeah, exactly.
But
Guiding the cosmos.
yeah, dude, you know, it's pretty hard to come up with all these freaking analogies and metaphors and stuff. um, and the intros too, man. I don't know if like you liked your intro, but I feel like I try to make them pretty creative and hype the people up for the show, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. I loved it. Yeah.
But you know, talking about my show, let's talk about your business. What direction do you want to take astrology with Andy?
Well, you know, what's interesting is that true to my Virgo moon likes predictability and it's not the most risk-taking kind of moon. So here's the thing. Again, it's not like I said suddenly, I'm going to quit my job and do astrology because let's face it, we have bills to pay. So what I did was I set myself like a three-year plan. So the first thing I did was while I started building my business, I was still working full time. Then I scaled back to like a consulting job. And I still have right now like a more kind of a permanent job that relates more to my nutrition studies that I do. But the goal is to keep growing the astrology business. And that was very good for me because that means that I can grow it out without being so concerned with 100% of my income has to come from astrology. That would have made this very stressful for me and taken out a lot of the fun. So one thing I've learned is that I think if you are going to start your own business, and this is my philosophy on it, there's nothing wrong with saying, I'm going to build it out slowly over time and something steady that where I know that I can pay all my expenses, my rent and my food and my health insurance, my car insurance.
Pretty much pay your life, right? Yeah.
Yeah. But the great thing, but at the same time, I had a goal of it needs to keep growing slowly but surely. So like if I look back at where my business was a year ago, I have more clients now than I did a year ago. To me, that's progress. I'm in no rush. So it's about ultimately what I would like is for it to be, yes, where I can make my entire living off of astrology, but I'm not rushing to get there, and I don't want to stress myself out. So that's kind of where I want to go with it.
And it's always good to be honest with yourself, because if you're not, then you'll get yourself in some trouble. I wanted to ask you. So you said you're a nutritionist as well, right?
Yeah.
Do you, with your clientele and nutrition, do you ever does astrology ever come up a lot? Is this something that comes up a lot, or is it just something every once in a while gets brought up?
So here's what I'll say. It really depends on the person, but open to it. A birth chart, I feel like if you are in certain professions, knowing your client's birth chart can help a lot, because if you see a birth chart of somebody who is very logical and needs a lot of structure, say that might be somebody who loves getting a meal plan that says, eat this at this hour and eat this at that hour. Whereas somebody else who needs a lot of freedom, you might just want to give them like, here's 20 recipes that you can eat at any time of the day, whenever you want. So that can just help you to kind of tune in to somebody so they can be more aligned with you. To that extent, I think it can help. But it's not like I'm going to say like, oh, you have your Mercury in Pisces, so you should eat lettuce. I feel like it's not that level of ridiculousness.
What's it called? Make a business. Mix it your nutrition and astrology.
Yeah, and my journalism. If I can somehow do all three, that would be a little bit interesting.
Yeah. All right. So we're gonna go ahead and plan your meal with the sky, and your sign's gonna say what you're gonna eat, and I'm gonna document it and write about it. Okay.
Right. Exactly.
But that's pretty cool though. That that like I'm sure you like when it blends together, right? When
I do. Yeah, I do. And I think, again, it's that whole thing of what I was saying earlier, that when I think of astrology and other things that I studied, I didn't waste my time. My journalism career helped me a lot with how to communicate. And one thing that I'm told a lot, and I'll own it because it's a good thing, people often tell me, I really like how clear you are when you explain astrology, how you make it simple to understand. And that's largely because of the skills that I learned having been a journalist. So that's why I always say to people, your career might not be like on a straight path, like from A to B. You might go all over the place and take 2 steps back and take a detour. That doesn't mean you're wasting your time. Like don't feel like everything has to make perfect sense. Sometimes 5 years down the road, you go, oh, sweet, I'm combining all these things. So it's all good to explore and change your mind. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, if you didn't go on that side path, you might not have found some secrets about yourself that you would have known.
Completely.
Right?
Yeah, completely. And there's nothing to say that, if you think about it too, this idea that we're supposed to like be 17, 18 years old and be like, I want to be this. It's like some people happen to know that they want to be something at that age and they are for the rest of their life.
Bless them.
You're 20. What's that?
I said, bless them.
Yeah, exactly. But if you think about your 20s, so much changes. You learn so much. You change perspective. In astrology, by the way, I was saying earlier how Saturn takes about 29 years to go around the chart. So that means that when you're around the age of 28, 29, you have your Saturn return. Saturn returns to where it was when you were born. And Saturn rules adulthood. So in astrology, we don't become adults until about 28, 29.
That's in February for me. 28.
A Saturn return is a very significant astrological milestone. That's when you officially become an adult. So that's a huge milestone coming up for you then in February.
All right. So you're telling me on February 4th, do all the immature and childish things I can do because that's it for me.
Well, I would say, because are you born February 4th or 5th? February,
Fifth.
yeah, exactly. So February 4th is your last chance. No, just kidding.
Yeah.
Uh,
Now, all right. If I do something dumb, it's on you. If I call you from jail on February 5th, you gotta go take me out. All right.
I'll be like, I don't know him.
All right. Well, um, so that's kind of all the questions I had about your career. We'll probably talk a little bit more about just some just random stuff,
Cool.
um,
Yeah.
and then probably wrap it up a little more. I got the live questions, and then we'll wrap it up. But that's a little bit later. Um, I wanted to ask you about, so this month there's a blue moon, right?
Uh huh.
And a blue moon is when there's two full moons in the same 30-day period or in the same month.
Wow. You've done your research.
And what's interesting about this blue moon is, so if the second full moon in this month falls on Halloween, is there anything
Correct.
significant to that?
Not at all.
Ah,
So
damn.
yeah. So here's the thing about moons. The ones that's significant are eclipses. So a solar eclipse is like astrologically like a really big deal new moon, and a lunar eclipse is a really big deal full moon. And if an eclipse happens on the day of your birthday, for example, that will really affect you for the rest of the year. Solar eclipse is about new beginnings. A lunar eclipse brings endings. So the only thing astrologically significant is an eclipse. Whether the blue moon or the moon is huge, closer to the Earth, none of that has any impact astrologically.
Oh, okay. Um,
Yeah.
I remember when I heard about it too, the blue moon. I was like, oh dang, the moon's gonna be blue. You know, I was like, maybe it's gonna be. You know how it's like it looks white or yellowish when you see it. I
Yeah.
was like, oh, it's gonna have
Yeah.
a blue tint to it. You know, I was like, that's gonna be sick. And then I
That'll
just
be
saw,
cool.
yeah, I just saw it was just every 30 days. But that's still cool. You know, that's still something that we.
Yeah.
And it's on
Yeah. Yeah.
Halloween, so I just like that too.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Um, this is kind of random again, but you know how we're talking about like the different like people from different areas. You know, you Vegas, me Cali.
Yeah.
Can you kind of tell I'm from California? Do I give that Cali vibe or from the Bay? Would you be able to tell it's from the Bay?
Not from the Bay, because and a lot of it is, I think we make conclusions or assumptions based on life experience. And the way you speak, like your tonality, reminds me so much of a friend I had in college who was from LA.
Oh,
Like,
okay.
like if I close my eyes, I could swear that it's him speaking. So I thought Cali because of that, but I would have thought LA. But it's not because of anything other than you remind me of somebody who I knew from LA. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So
no, yeah, that makes sense.
yeah, yeah,
You
yeah.
want to give a shout out to your friend from LA? Just screw it,
Yeah, shout out to my friend Adon. We
Adon.
went together. Yep.
Oh, okay. I in school I knew someone named Adonis. Uh, so
Adonis, like the
yeah,
Greek god.
yeah, that was their name, Adonis.
Wow, interesting. That's to be interesting when you introduce yourself and you have the name of a Greek god. That must be interesting.
My cousin named his son Atreus, and
And who is that? Is that somebody from Greek mythology? Oh.
no, it's from the game God of War. You know
Oh,
that guy
okay.
Kratos, the main character. I think
I
he.
don't. I haven't played that, so I
Oh,
don't know.
okay. I think
Am I
he
showing
goes
my
and
age?
kills he goes and kills like the people, the Greek gods or whatever, and his son's named
Oh,
Atreus, so that's why he named him that. And
oh, okay.
it's kind of
Cool.
funny because we're Mexican, and Atreus is a
Uh
pretty like white name. So I was like, I wonder how his mom's gonna think about that.
huh.
But I guess like if you had a child and you said you're from Argentina, right?
I am, yeah. I'm from Buenos Aires. My whole family still lives there. So I say that because it's not like I'm like, oh, my great grandfather was Argentine. Like I legit was born there, lived there till I was. In fact, I didn't even speak English till I moved here when I was 8 years old. So it's like I'm from Argentina, like literally.
So what's like the native language in Argentina?
Spanish.
Spanish? Okay, I kind of assumed, but it's in like proper Spanish, right?
Yeah, it's funny how, yeah, it's also just the accent is different. So, for example, in Argentina, the Y or the double L, we pronounce it as sh. So, like horse, which most other countries would say caballo.
Caballo. Yeah.
We say caballo.
Caballo. Okay, that is pretty crazy.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
how do you say five in Spanish?
Cinco.
Cinco. I remember my teacher from Spain. He said on cinto, like
Oh, cinco.
yeah,
Oh,
cinco,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
And like
Yeah,
everyone,
because
oh, go for it.
I was gonna say yeah, because in Spain and also the S is like a sh. Yeah, we in Argentina we have a very Italian way of speaking Spanish. Like our accent almost sounds Italian.
Italiano, just.
Totally. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Exactly.
No, that's cool. Yeah, and I remember like, well, here in California, obviously, like everyone that speaks Spanish is like Mexican or Hispanic. They got that Hispanic, that Mexican background. So everyone's like, yeah, it's not cinco, it's cinco, and like they'd be arguing with the teacher, and
Oh, right, right, right.
yeah, so I thought that was pretty cool. Uh, yeah, they treated that teacher bad. Like, unfortunately, everyone failed that
Oh
class.
man.
But yeah, I think that's pretty cool. I didn't even know you're from Argentina. Well, I saw your last name, and I was like, oh, that's a pretty interesting last name. But
Bellatti.
and
Yeah.
then Andy, where's Andy come from?
Well, yeah. So my real name, but it's Marcelo Andres.
Oh, okay.
Andy comes from Andres, but it's not like I moved to the U.S. and like gringoized my name.
Yeah,
What happened is that when I was little, when I was like 3 or 4 years old, I was obsessed with this cartoon, Andy Pandy.
Andy Pandy.
Andy Andres, my whole family called me Andy. So, but they don't say it Andy, they say it Andy because they say it in Spanish.
Okay.
Andy, you know what I mean?
Like
But
almost like
yeah,
Handy, right?
right, yeah, yeah, yeah. So that's where it comes from. But my middle name is Andres, so it's not like I'm named, like Tomas, Roberto, and people are like, who the fuck is Andy?
Yeah.
But it relates to my middle name.
Did you watch Toy Story when you were younger?
I'm not a big fan of like animated movies. So I know of it. I've seen clips, but I mean I know there's a character named Andy
Yeah.
in Toy Story. I know that. I know that much. But like I haven't even watched the sequels or anything like that.
Oh, and then on the bottom of the toy shoes, he writes Andy, so he knows that.
Oh,
Andy
really?
Yeah. So whenever you have your significant other, go ahead and write Andy on the bottom of their shoes. They'll probably like it.
There you go.
Hey, you're giving me advice. Maybe I'll give you some advice, huh?
There we go. Tit for tat.
uh, did you watch The Lion King? I know you said you don't like animated movies, but
I did, but like back when they came out in '92 or '93. So I mean, it's been
okay.
years.
So when I was born, '93.
Oh, okay. There you go.
There's
Yeah,
a-
I was in fifth grade.
There's a scene where like Simba talks to his dad because his dad died, and he's the king of the whole thing. Anyways, his dad comes in like the shape of the clouds and the stars when he talks to him, saying, "Remember who you are." And
Okay.
I was wondering if you like that part of the movie, but never mind. I guess not.
Well, I mean, as you talk about it, I mean, yes, I would enjoy that part of the movie. The whole thing. You mean just the whole thing of like a spirit communicating kind
Yeah.
of thing? Yeah, I'm into all that. I do like that.
And then
Yeah.
too, it has to do with the stars too. So
Yeah, I love that. The
and then
constellation, all that.
and then they say, I guess I don't know if this is something they made up or if it's more like an African like thing, like vibe. But they say that like the stars in the sky are like the fallen kings looking out after you. I mean,
Oh, okay. I like that.
yeah,
Yeah, interesting how thinking about astrology, I mean, astrology has been around like back from Babylonia. So it's interesting how I think as humans, there's always this whole thing of thinking about what is beyond us, right? And whether it's astrology or aliens or even just astronomy, even if you have a telescope and you like to look at Mars or Jupiter without astrology, I think it's a very human thing to be like, what is life about? Is there something bigger than us? And I feel like every culture throughout time has some way, even if you think about the pyramids, it's I think it's a human need almost to look up and figure stuff out. I don't know if it happens to you, but sometimes if I'm on vacation somewhere, like not in a city, like in a really rural place,
yeah,
look at the sky and you just see it full of stars. My mind goes to like, when you think about it, we're just like floating in the middle of space.
yeah.
And that gives you perspective, then like the nitty gritty bullshit doesn't become as important when you think about just how vast all of that is.
Yeah, and how tiny you really are in the grand scheme of things, you know.
Totally. Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Um, so what'd you think? Do you remember like 2012 that the world was supposed to end because the Mayans and their calendar? What did you think of that?
No, see, for me, 2012 was, it was the year before 2013 and the year after 2011. That's all the significance I gave it. Um, I do think that, I'm more aligned with the idea that what they meant by that was that it signified like maybe like a shift in consciousness, or more like an era coming to
Oh,
an end.
okay, yeah, that's what I was about to say. End of an era.
Yeah, I think it's that. I don't believe in any doomsday prophecies. Because here's what I tell people: astrology has shown us that life goes on. There's been some really awful stuff that has happened in the history of Earth, and life goes on. And I don't mean that in a callous way, like, don't, who cares? Life goes on. But, I think especially now where it's so easy to watch news 24/7, or you can Google and read about the tragedies happening in every country in the world, it's so easy to say like the world is worse than ever. And my thing is, well, but the world is also in many ways the best it's ever been, in some ways as well. It's all about perspective. Um, and we just have to evolve.
Yeah, no, I agree with you on that. I like I said, I kind of, I guess I'm more scientific in life. You know, I'm not too spiritual. I'm not too like, I don't know. It's kind of hard. Like, it's funny because like I can say like, oh, I have to see evidence to believe in something. You know, but at the same time too is like, well, I do believe that there's like aliens out there. Like what are the chances that we're the only life forms in the whole galaxy, in the whole universe? You know, like what are the odds of that? Um, so I can, I guess I'm more, like I said, I'm more on the scientific side, but at the same time, I do like hearing different ideas. I like hearing different opinions, and sometimes some people are crazy. I've heard I've heard some crazy things.
Of course.
Yeah.
And and there's a limit to it all. That's why I say, like, even with astrology, I mean, you can take it to ridiculous levels, but I always say, look, I'm a very grounded person. Like, we all live, because for example, there's this whole thing that you might hear about the 5D world, and we're all gonna evolve to like the fifth dimension. I'm like, that's all well and good, but here on Earth, we all have to pay bills. Like, there's still things that are real. So yes, I like to entertain all that stuff, but we also can't get so into all of that we lose sight of reality. So to me, like, I think I blend reality with all this other stuff pretty well. And I keep it very, again, to me, it's about being practical and making this useful and relevant to your life.
This question is gonna be completely crazy.
Uh,
I remember when I thought of this, I was like, damn, like this sounds like if I was high and I thought of this. But I was at work, and when I'm at work, I focus at the task at hand. But I have so many stuff running in my head because like, I would probably quit if I didn't entertain myself somehow. But so you can kind of like with humans, right? You can with the signs, you can kind of like do a guess of how personality is gonna be and like their traits and stuff.
yeah.
With animals, do you think that works too? Like the time they're born and
Well, what's interesting? I mean, here's the thing. I'm not going to get on some ridiculous rant about how, like, I do birth charts for cats. um, but I will say this, I'm a big cat person. But
okay.
my Aquarius cat, he was definitely very much like, he did his own thing, and in Aquarius form, he was kind of more like a dog than a cat. Like, he was very different. You know what I mean? He had a very different thing.
He loved you pretty much compared to other cats with
Yeah, he was more like, he acted like a dog. Like, I would literally walk him on a leash.
yeah.
Yeah. Very Aquarius, very like outside the norm. My Pisces cat in true form is like a gentle, he weighs 28 pounds, but he's the most like, he has never bitten me once. He has never scratched me. He's the most gentle, like I can grab him and like put him on his back and like make him do sit-ups and like grab his legs and he doesn't do anything to me. So no, I don't do pets birth charts, but I do think that even with pets, sometimes you can see that sun sign kind of peeking out a little bit. So that's what I'll say.
Okay.
But I do believe, I mean, here's where maybe to some people I'm now going off on some weird ass tangent, but
Go for it.
in the same way that I truly do believe that, we are all spiritual beings having a human experience. I do think that animals like dogs are spiritual beings having a canine experience. I do think that they have souls to me, they are energy. Um, and that's, I get it. Some people might be like, okay, this guy has smoked way too much shit. But it's truly what I think. To me, they are energy. And like, when I put down one of my cats 4 years ago, I was there. And the second that he died, you could, I did not see his soul leave his body. I'm not saying
Yeah.
that. You could see it in his eyes.
Yeah.
Like, died, like something turned off.
Yeah.
And to me, there's something about energy, spirit, soul, call it whatever you want, but it's not just an animal.
Um, sorry, like I don't want like let's just say someone like just catches the last minute of this and they just see us talking about like astrology for animals. I don't want people to think you're crazy. It's just,
Nah, no, no, all good, all good.
but like I said, that was something I thought of. Like, well, like let's see what he says because like that's that was some I don't know. I went like when
That's a great question. That's
yeah.
an awesome question.
And yeah, like I said, I was like people are probably gonna think I'm high. Like what the hell are you thinking? But
No, I love it. I think it's cool.
I saw something too. It was like a post on like Facebook or something. They said like when you have to put an animal down, like I don't know if you like that case you were talking about, but they say
Yeah.
that a lot of times that people will leave the room when like they put the animal down because they don't want to see their friend or their family get put away, and it kind of made me like dang like realize like it's kind of messed up to do that to walk away get out of the room because it's your family like your family a lot of people consider them family. It's their last moment and they're freaking out because they're about to go, they're about to pass, and like you should stay in there with them and comfort them because instead of them being with some random stranger that's about to like help them meet their end, they could at least see you and see your face before their last wishes. So
Yeah, and it's interesting to say that because that's where, going back to the chart, like the moon talks about how we handle emotions. There's some people who their default is when things get very emotional, they bolt, they run.
yeah.
There's other people who are more like when things get emotional, I want to be there. So that's very much in line with how we handle things. There's some people who have a very challenging time crying in front of somebody else. You know what I mean? And there's
Yeah.
other people like, well, if I cry, I cry. So I am more the kind of person where I wanted to be there.
Yeah.
I was crying my eyes out, but I wanted to be there for the very reason that you say. So yeah, that is interesting, but it shows, how we each kind of process things in our own way.
Yeah. So I guess that's kind of a good way to pretty much end this. I'm gonna go on to the segment where people can ask any questions that they want. Did you like the questions that I asked you?
They were great. They were awesome.
Okay. Uh,
Have I been a good guest? Have I been entertaining and fun and cool?
yeah. This actually went. I'm not gonna say a lot better than I thought, but it did go pretty good. It went smoothly. I've had, this. I'm kind of getting more into the role of being a interviewer, I guess, slash host.
Yeah.
I remember my first episode, my guest talked a lot, which was good for me because it was my first episode. So I was like, you know what? They're helping steer this episode. They're helping steer the show. So that worked out great because, like, okay, it takes away some pressure from me, They're helping me out. And now I feel like, um, everyone watching, if you guys want to comment, go ahead and say that I'm doing a good job. I've improved. I've been great since
Yeah.
the beginning.
P.S. The Leo moon loves validation. So
Yeah, exactly.
please do that.
But I do feel like I have learned, which is good because if I haven't learned anything, then maybe I shouldn't be doing this, right?
Yeah. Well, and what's funny too is that having studied journalism, I know what it's like when you interview somebody and they're just like, yes, no. Like, I mean, as a journalist, I hated that. So I feel like the most fun interviews are when somebody kind of opens up, not that they talk nonstop, but when you don't have to feel like, oh my God, this is such a chore. Like,
Yeah.
just, you know.
Uh, I had someone on here. I don't want to like. I'm not gonna throw him under the bus. I'm not gonna. It was a. I'm gonna say his name because it's kind of rude to talk about someone. But he was a tattoo artist. Mike Keane. Um, and like I liked what he was telling me. Because he's telling me about tattooing and all that. It was great, but his conversations, it felt like he was talking to himself. Like he wasn't really like talking to me. Like,
Mm.
and that I was kind of like, that's kind of whack. Like, I get it. This episode is about you, but it's also like a podcast. It's a conversation and an interview. So like a back and forth is great. But like I said, it wasn't terrible. But at the same time, I was just like, all right, come. Like he was pretty much talking to himself. But like during the second half of the show, he got more personal and more like talkative, and that's why I
I
like
got
you because you hold a conversation, right?
awesome. Yeah.
Uh, like if you wanted to, if people wanted to come on here and just hear you lecture about like your astrology, they would just go straight to your channel, like.
Yeah, and one reason why I love doing podcasts is that because I do have a son in Gemini, so I do love banter and back and forth. Is that I like again kind of making things approachable for people. If to your point, if I just sat here and started talking about these like technical terms, like Mars quincunx Pluto in the seventh house, people are gonna be like, what is he talking about? So I like how you and I had this banter, and I kind of weaved in a few things as we talked about other topics. So it was great.
Yeah, and I kind of wanted like I kind of try to put myself in the shoes too of like someone just like the people watching, and I'm not calling you guys dumb, but there might be some people that don't understand certain things you're talking about, or I might not understand it. So that's why I'll ask. That way they can learn.
Of course, yeah.
You might not put astrology into your life, whoever's watching this, but you might be able to take certain aspects of it and use it towards your life, and that's the whole goal of this.
Yeah, and my other hope too is that at least people listening, at least people will realize, oh, there's more to it than just my son. That to me is already huge because most people don't know that. They're like, astrology is just putting people into 12 buckets based on when they were born. It's like, well, not really. So even that, if somebody walks away from this knowing that, I think it's a win.
And then like I said, I appreciate you coming on here, helping me out with this. It's I feel like this is good for both of us. Like this could be like a giant commercial for you if you use it that way properly. And if not, then at least people will get to know your personality, and they'll get to know that, hey, this person with this brand, they are actual human being, and they're pretty cool. And I would definitely support them because I like who they are.
Yeah, that's why I love Instagram, because I often say that choosing an astrologer is like choosing a therapist. Not everybody's for you. Not everybody who wants a reading, I'm not the right astrologer for them. So the cool thing about Instagram is that I show you my approach and how I am. Some people will be like, I love this guy. And some people will be like, not so much, not for me. And that's fine. Because there's, as you were saying a few earlier, that the way people talk about astrology, you could see their personalities. And it's great to have that diversity. There's some people who will gravitate more towards one kind of astrologer or another. So, it's good to have just different types, different varieties.
All right. If you guys want to find out if Andy Bellatti is for you, now's your chance to go ahead and ask him any questions you want. I felt really pressured right now to say your last name because I feel like I got it good the first time.
You did it perfectly.
Okay. So we're going to take a quick 45-second break. Like I said, now's your time to ask away. And we'll be back. Let's go. Let's see, what time is it? I can do this perfectly. All right. Here we go.
1, 2, 2, 2, 2.
Ask away, my people.
For people out there listening to this funky ass boom-bap album. Check it out.
We got live questions with Andy Bellatti. Let's go. I hear you guys typing. So we're back We're live. I don't see no questions yet, but it does take a little while to post. So in case no one asks any questions, I always have a backup plan. So I guess either while I wait or no one has questions. Do you have a question for me?
Do I have a question for you, or are you asking your listeners?
I'm asking you, my listener.
Oh, let's see. That's right. I'm playing both roles here. Well, I did. Well, actually, I asked you this before we started, but now I wanna ask it publicly.
Okay. Not guilty.
Right. um, and this I ask whenever I start a reading, I always ask, "How did you find me?" So, how did you hear about me?
So people add me on Instagram, and since like I said, I'm new. My page on Instagram is new. Pretty much anyone that follows me, I'll follow them back. And it was someone from Santa Cruz. They followed me, so I followed them back, and they posted something with you, and it said like astrology, or it had, you know how you said you put retrograde and like Mercury in retrograde or
Oh
something.
yeah.
They put like,
Yeah.
oh, that's so me or something like that. And then I seen it and I was like, you know what? My fiance likes astrology, so I'm gonna see if Andy's down to go on my show.
Nice.
So
Cool. Yeah. And that's always good because it shows me, going back to how sometimes an Instagram post, not all of them, but some will take me several hours to put together. It's great to hear that because it shows me that, that's worth my time. I mean, it's a lot of work, but it's worth it because, to your point, somebody might share something and then somebody sees it. So that's very cool.
so your social media game is working, is pretty much.
Yeah. And by the way, and this is just like a business thing, but I only do Instagram. I'm not doing Facebook and Twitter. I just find that Instagram is the best medium for me.
I feel like Instagram is the perfect middle ground for businesses because they can showcase their work. Because Instagram's about pictures and stuff, so you can showcase your work on there. And you know how I told you his name was Mike Lamb, I think. You know how I told you I learned a lot of stuff from him too.
Yep.
Something he told me was pretty interesting. He told me he kind of is the opposite of you. So he said he does Facebook mostly. And
Ah.
and he said he does Facebook because he's a tattoo artist. He said he feels Facebook with its algorithm is more locally. It helps him find customers more locally. I asked him how, and he does Instagram too. I asked him how come he doesn't do Twitter, and he said he feels like Twitter is more for like worldwide, nationwide. So
Interesting.
yeah, I don't.
That makes sense.
Yeah, and like when he said that, I was like, oh, you know what, that is smart. So I don't know if that can help you at all, but if you're, that's also a thought too. If you ever want.
That makes sense. By the way, this reminds me, can I share a funny story about when I got my business license?
Yeah, go ahead. And then after that, I'll
Okay.
read one of the questions.
Cool. Yeah, this will be very brief, but so because I learned a lot of things. So I have a business license to practice astrology in Nevada. And when I looked into it, I fill out all my paperwork. It's like a bunch of paperwork, and you have to get fingerprinted and do a background check, which I'm cool with. There's nothing, no red flags there. But because, a lot of these laws were written decades ago, and in Nevada, the part of like the legal code that astrology falls under is the same one that like erotic services and massages fall under. So legally, you can only do astrology like behind a curtain, like in the business district. So originally I go to to submit my paperwork and they tell me, oh, you can't do this from your house. You have to like rent a space. And I was like, are you kidding me? So, I mean, I had to fill out a form explaining that like, I do it on Zoom. It's not people coming to my apartment. So I got permission to do it at home. But it's funny how you learn about, things written 50 years ago that are still legally binding. It was just kind of crazy to me.
Did you tell him? You're like, just because I'm naked doing the astrology doesn't mean anything's going to happen.
Right. Calm down, people, please. Don't be so prudish.
They're like, oh, Uranus is showing.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I didn't even think about that. Yeah. Bad idea. So all I had to do was just fill out a form saying it's done on Zoom and all that stuff. But because, it goes into the whole thing of like, is where you live zoned for business and all this stuff. But because and actually, as more of an introvert, I don't want people coming to my apartment. I don't want to go to some house. We do it on the computer, much better.
Hell yeah. Eventually, I'm kind of the opposite. I would like to do this in like a studio. Have
Oh, I
you
can
know
see that.
have like a have people come in. I think that'd be dope. But I don't know if that'll eventually take off. Hopefully, I just
Yeah.
I do a podcast with my cousin on Sundays, and we do it like
Oh,
we do the podcast in person, and I like the vibe because like there's a little lag when we talk online, like right now, and
yeah. And I also know that in person, I mean, even though we're on video and we can see each other's like body language, but we're seeing each other from like the neck up pretty much.
yeah.
It's a little bit different, but I hear you. I think in person you just kind of vibe differently. Yeah, I
Yeah,
hear you.
and like you were saying about energy, the energy bounces off each other. You could like, so
Yeah.
so that's how I feel about that. Christian Jimenez asked earlier. I don't know if English is your first language or you were typing fast, but he asked what it's not with the people around you, but about your job or career. Would an astrology reading help understand?
So what's the question exactly?
I don't know.
Well, okay, okay. Here's what I'll answer based on how I understood
What
it.
is?
I think he's asking, can you glean information about somebody's job or career based on their chart?
Okay, yeah, yeah. I guess yeah. That's what.
And the answer is yes. In fact, later today, the video I'm posting is all about that. It's so funny that was asked. I just recorded that like 2 hours ago. Yes. So in a birth chart, what I can see is what careers are you best suited for, or what do you bring to your career? And it's good to know that, because if you align with that, then you'll feel fulfilled and satisfied in what you do. So again, I might have a chart that talks about art and being an artist, and then somebody works in finance, because again, we have free will. But what happens is that if you end up working in something that your chart doesn't really show, it doesn't resonate with you and you feel like something's missing. So, but yes, I can definitely speak to people about, if somebody has some doubts about, what careers am I best suited for? What do you recommend what would I be best at? Your chart will definitely provide some information on that.
All right, there you go. Oh, my fiance is asking, Andy, can you expose Jerry's good and bad qualities from his birth chart?
Yes, I can. So again, I think that one of the good qualities is that, having the sun and Saturn and Mercury all in Aquarius gives you a lot of rationality, because Aquarius is actually the sign that rules science. So when you have a lot of Aquarius, you like to think about things in a way that is more rational and logical, and it's not coming from a place of heightened emotionality. When people have a lot of planets in the water signs, those are people who can have a very hard time, coming at things from a more detached way. So that's definitely a skill there. You have your midheaven in Aries at 0 degrees of Aries, which means that part of your destiny here and part of your career is actually to chart your own path and blaze your own trail and be an entrepreneur. At some point I have an Aries midheaven too. So I didn't really start my own entrepreneurial stuff until a year and a half ago with astrology. But when you have an Aries midheaven, at some point, it's very important to do that, because if not, it can feel like something is missing. So that's, you have that ability to do that. The things I would watch is just, again, with this Mars in the 12th house and this Sun conjunct Saturn, this thing about, in some ways, maybe holding yourself back or feeling like you're not quite ready, or being a little bit kind of muting yourself, when in reality you need to be out there. Because with that moon in Leo, you would do very well, and you need to kind of be in the spotlight in some way. But I think at times you might hold yourself back a little bit. But this is a very I would say, pretty healthy chart, in the sense that there aren't very, there's other charts I do that have a lot of challenges. And this one, listen, we all have stuff that we have to work on, but there isn't, but there isn't anything here where I'm like, wow, there's a lot of say, blockages or really heavy energy that has to be worked out. And also, by the way, you have Venus very close to your midheaven. Venus is in your 10th house.
My 10th.
What's that?
I said my 10th. It's in my 10th
That's
house.
and the 10th is career. And Venus close to heaven makes you, it gives you charisma. It gives you it's important for you to be liked, but it also makes it easy for people to like you and to resonate with you. So it's another indication of somebody who would do well with the public. So a podcast, I think, is a great thing for somebody with this chart to have. So I'll have to say about that.
Okay, I'll go ahead and PayPal you the money to not talk bad about me.
Sweet. There we go.
I'm glad we have that agreement. But I feel like this is a good way to end the show,
Cool. Yeah, I love it.
I appreciate you coming on here, helping me out. I'm glad I got to know you better.
Platform.
Yeah, no problem, man. Now is the perfect time to drop any of your socials where anyone can find you. Your social medias, your web pages, whatever you want. Go ahead. Where can we find you?
Yeah, my website is astrologywithandy.com. I have a blog there where that's only when I only post a blog when there's something pretty significant to talk about. It's not weekly or anything like that, but I have a few blog posts already. And on my website, you can see my entire list of services ranging from, again, a birth chart reading with the year ahead. I also do what is called a synastry read. That is a couples chart. When you look at two people, well, not just couples. Synastry can be for friends, family members, romantic relationships. But when you look at two people's charts and you help guide them, where are they most compatible and where do they need to work on things? And you can find me on Instagram, Astrology with Andy. I post about 3 to 5 times a week. And once a month, I do kind of like an Ask Me Anything in my stories. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Website and Insta.
All right. I appreciate you. I appreciate everyone that watched the show. Let's see. Everyone that interacted. A Piece of Us Vlogs. Ana Mendoza. Esmeralda Mendoza. Laura Mendoza. Christian Jimenez. Nate 1234431. Let's see who else. Pilsen HC. You guys are dope. I appreciate you guys following me. You guys are part of the Why Not Me squad. Let's go. You guys can catch me Wednesdays live here on YouTube and Twitch on the Why Not Me podcast, 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. If you want to know more about me personally and less about my guests, I guess, you can go ahead and catch me on the Top 3 Views podcast. I record them Sundays. They come out Monday, sometime Tuesday. Unless this last episode, the file got messed up. That's terrible. But that's a new one. You guys can go ahead and follow me on my socials, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Everything is going to be posted down below. Not just mine, but Andy's as well. Like I said, Andy, I appreciate you. You're dope. May the stars align in your favor. And everyone else's. I'm going to go ahead and end this off. And let's give this a quick break. Thank you, everybody. So let's go. Let's do a quick break, and I'll go ahead and talk to you real quick at the end of this, okay?